Chapter 343. Han Fei felt that these people were really stupid. If he were in the Blue Sea town, he could sell the entire fish dragons to buy spiritual fruits. Yang Ruoyun snapped. Can you absorb all the spiritual energy in the spirit fruit? If you can even use half of it, you'll be considered very efficient. On second thought, Han Fei realized that he was right. He had never considered this problem before, because the spirit fruits that entered his mouth never leaked out a single drop of spirit energy. They were all stored away. Yang Ruoyun thought for a moment and said, no one can replenish their spiritual energy with spiritual fruits at the bottom of the sea. Firstly, the spirit fruit contained too much spirit qi, and using it to replenish spirit qi was too extravagant. Therefore, before going out to sea, rather than buying spirit fruits, it was better to buy restorative panaceas. Not only could it replenish spiritual qi quickly, but it was also cheap. Therefore, it was only natural that people who went to sea had fewer spirit fruits. Most people wouldn't take spirit fruits out to sea at all. Before they set sail, they would basically use it all up. Unless it's a spirit fruit found in the sea, only then would they keep it with them. Enlightened, Han Fei asked again, there are so few spiritual fruits. Why are they sold so cheaply on the dragon boats? Yang Ruoyun shook her head. What do you mean? The basic price of the most common spiritual fruit was between 00 and 1,000 mid-quality pearls. A high-quality spirit refilling pill only cost dozens of mid-quality pearls. Usually, people would only buy spiritual fruits when they were breaking through. Usually, who would buy it? Spirit fruits aren't as cheap as you think. Han Fei thought to himself, a bunch of idiots. However, Han Fei didn't ask anymore. 5 spiritual fruits and 40,000 points of spiritual energy added up to more than 400,000 points of spiritual energy. Plus the 300,000 points of spiritual energy that he had stored, he had 700,000 points in total. In the past, he wouldn't have thought that he could obtain this in just a few hours. If he had so much spiritual qi at the beginning, the growth of his strength would probably be even more ridiculous than it was now. Seeing that he had enough spiritual energy for the time being, Han Fei was not in a hurry. He looked at Yang Ruoyun. You said you came to San Francisco. The purpose of the level 3 fishery is the seaborne prairie. What about teaming up? Yang Ruoyun was a little hesitant. Although Han Fei saved her, it seemed that the crisis that Han Fei brought to her was no less than that of the seaborne prairie. So many experts wanted to kill him. Should he go with him? However, when she looked into the depths of the forest, she could not help but sigh. All right. However, the place I'm going might be more dangerous than fortuitous opportunities. You may be strong, but a lot of experts have died in the seaborne prairie. Even peak-level dangling fishers may not survive. Han Fei smiled faintly. Then why do you want to go as an intermediate dangling fisher? Yang Ruoyun's expression was solemn. I naturally have my reasons. Han Fei was surprised. More important than life and death? Yang Ruoyun nodded. Yes, more important than life and death. Han Fei couldn't help but admire this woman. He dared to come in because he had the confidence. This girl came in with all her might. Judging from the strength of the battle between Yang Ruoyun and the twins just now, she might be stronger than ordinary intermediate dangling fishers, but she could barely be an advanced dangling fisher at most. There must be a very important reason for the man to come to the seaborne prairie alone. In Han Fei's opinion, there must be treasures in a place where a person risked his life to go. If others wanted to fight, he had to fight as well. Han Fei was not as talented as Xia Shaochan and the others. Only Han Fei himself knew that it was not his talent that made him strong. Therefore, he had to fight for opportunities. Han Fei smiled casually. Then let's go. But try not to die. I still want to go to the next dangerous treasure trove. Yang Ruoyun rolled her eyes. Han Fei was really unpredictable. Were treasure troves so attractive? Fine, they were indeed attractive. Now that they had teamed up, Han Fei immediately cast the divine healing technique on Yang Ruoyun. Half an hour later, when Yang Ruoyun's wounds were mostly healed, the two of them finally set off. Yang Ruoyun asked, Where did you come from? Han Fei replied, The purple bamboo forest. It's a beautiful place, but there are too many bugs. Yang Ruoyun looked at Han Fei in surprise. You came here through the purple bamboo forest? Han Fei was confused. Didn't you? Yang Ruoyun's lips twitched. Of course not. The purple bamboo forest covers an area of about 500 kilometers. It's also known as the insect forest. The stickworms and red spirit spiders there are famous. Few people who aren't armorists enter the seaborne prairie from there. Han Fei shrugged. I'm not an armorist. I'm a spirit gatherer. Yang Ruoyun rolled her eyes. I don't believe you. That brat was too cunning. If she hadn't known Han Fei for a long time, she might have been fooled too. Yang Ruoyun pointed ahead and said, the first 1,000 kilometers of the seaborne prairie are actually more dangerous than the middle. However, it also ensures the prosperity of the seaborne prairie. After the first 1,000 kilometers, the last 500 kilometers are relatively safer. That's where seaweed and algae gather. It's a place in the seaborne prairie that's suitable for regular fish to live. Han Fei asked in surprise, have you been here before? Yang Ruoyun shook her head. No, but I've studied this place for a long time. As they swam deeper, Yang Ruoyun continued to introduce the seaborne prairie to Han Fei. After the communication, Han Fei finally learned that, although this place was named after the reeds on the surface of the sea, it was much less dangerous in the reeds than in the water. In Yang Ruoyun's words, as long as there was enough spiritual energy, a boat could cross the reeds in the sky. If there were any special creatures or unusual events, they would have been discovered and taken care of a long time ago. Therefore, it wasn't very dangerous on the surface of the sea. However, because of the green arrow venomous frogs and something named venomous blood vines, most people wouldn't explore the reeds. Of course, there were also many people who were very interested in using poison, so they would go out of their way to collect some poison. However, there weren't many of them. It wasn't that they didn't want to play with poisons, but that they might be poisoned to death. Few dangling fishers had arts related to poisons, so nobody was interested in them on the surface of the sea. But it was different at the bottom of the sea. According to Yang Ruoyun, she was ambushed 3 times in the seaborne prairie. But she had come in with the twin brothers in hot pursuit. Also, she intentionally avoided them, so she made it in safely. It was said that there would be more ambushes at the second checkpoint of the seaborne prairie 1,500 kilometers down. Those people would be even stronger. As he expected, Han Fei didn't run into any exotic beasts on his way. After about 200 kilometers, Han Fei found that the scenery around him changed. The seaweed vines were becoming fewer and fewer, replaced by a rocky land. Or rather, it wasn't a mountain rock, but a strange, colorful object. Those objects looked weird. Some were columnar with holes in the middle, some were strips like coral, and some were chubby and seemed to be wriggling. Sponges? Yang Ruoyun nodded. It seems that we're not lucky enough to enter the sponge area. I'm afraid that hundreds of kinds of sponge are living here. They seem dead, but there may be exotic sponges here. Han Fei was lost for words. Even the most exotic sponges are just sponges. Can they fly up and hit me? Yang Ruoyun turned around and looked at Han Fei. They're even more horrifying than that. In the level 3 fishery, it said that some people have encountered exotic sponges that can swallow them. Whoever is absorbed by them will be turned into stones. Han Fei was dumbfounded. Are they still sponges? Am I not good at biology, or are there miracles in life? Sponges have no head, tail, torso, limbs, nerves, or organs. Their main components are calcium carbonate or silicon carbonate and a lot of collagen. I can carry all of them, okay? Are you telling me that there are sponges that can petrify people? Isn't it a medusa? Suddenly, Han Fei paused. Wait a moment. Yang Ruoyun? Han Fei hurried to take out his fishing rod and cast the hook. The moment the hook was thrown out, it seemed to have become invisible. In fact, it had turned into a water vein that resembled a stream. Yang Ruoyun was slightly surprised. What a weird fishing technique. However, she looked at the direction Han Fei was looking at and was slightly surprised. Yellow-blooded sea cucumber. Han Fei said, "This is good stuff. It's rare and even more expensive than a spiritual fruit. I bought one on the dragon boat. Just thinking about it makes me feel like I'm losing out. I should buy a few more." Yang Ruoyun frowned. the yellow-blooded sea cucumber is a great tonic. It doesn't contain much spiritual energy, but it's full of energy. It's mainly used for body refinement. You're also a body refiner? Han Fei didn't answer. Bullshit. I would have been dead if I didn't have a tough body. He activated Flash Hook and Thousand Twining at the same time, and the yellow-blooded sea cucumber was tied up before it noticed anything wrong. But when Han Fei retracted the fishing rod, a ball-shaped yellow sponge suddenly came with the fishing hook. Han Fei? Chapter 344. Han Fei thought that Yang Ruoyun was talking nonsense. What sponge could petrify people? How could that be? It didn't make sense. Of course Han Fei knew what a sponge was. It used to be made into dish towels and bath balls in the Mediterranean. You expect this thing to kill people? But now Han Fei's face suddenly changed. This was a new species. Its mobility was comparable to that of a fish. A string of data appeared in his eyes. Name, star-chasing sponge. Introduction, an exotic sponge that has been nourished by spiritual energy for a long time. It has a brain and can chase prey according to the movement of water. Normally, it would roll along with the ocean currents and self-destruct when encountering an enemy. Level 33, Quality. Rare, contains spiritual energy greater than 1096 points. Effect. Inettable, collectible, none. Unabsorbable. Han Fei waved the hook hard and got out of the range of the star-chasing sponge. At the same time, he said to Yang Ruoyun telepathically, "Run." Yang Ruoyun didn't know what was going on, but seeing that Han Fei was running away in panic, she immediately ran too. In the end, before the two of them could run more than 100 meters, there was a loud bang behind them, and a huge wave sent the two of them flying far away. However, before the two of them could swim out, they saw star-chasing sponges flying towards them one after another. I was attracted here. Han Fei's blood froze. What did I do? All I did was catch a yellow-blooded sea cucumber. Who did I offend? Yang Ruoyun's expression changed. Oh no, why are these sponges following us? Han Fei said helplessly, they seem to be able to sense the flow of water. As long as we continue to swim, I'm afraid they will continue to follow us. To be honest, Han Fei had never met such a shameless creature. This thing was like a will-o'-the-wisp. If you ran, it would follow you. You thought that the ghost was chasing you, but in fact, it was your running that caused the wind to move. That's why it's been chasing you. It was the same for the star-chasing sponge. However, it was different from ghost fire. Ghost fire would not explode. However, this thing was like a torpedo. Before anyone could even touch it, it would explode. Bang, 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 bang. After a while, Han Fei and Yang Ruoyun rushed out of the sponge area. However, at this moment, the two of them were in a sorry state. Yang Ruoyun was covered in blood from the explosion. Her hair was a mess. Her face, skin, and clothes were all sprayed with a pale yellow. The disgusting juice of Han Fei was not much better off. However, his physique was much stronger than Yang Ruoyun's. Other than his clothes that were blown into tatters, the rest of his body was still intact. Of course, Han Fei's body was also pale yellow. Se liquid. Han Fei wiped it, only to find that it was so sticky that even the seawater couldn't wash it off. Even with the help of spiritual qi oscillation, he only managed to disperse the sticky liquid after 3 to 5 times. Yang Ruoyun's eyes were burning with anger. Han Fei smiled awkwardly and cast a divine healing technique on her. Don't blame me for that. I'm here to look for treasures. Who knew that there would be such a disgusting thing? Yang Ruoyun, can you not take risks for these small profits? It was just a yellow-blooded sea cucumber. The next time you board a dragon boat, you can buy goods in the trading market. Spirit fruits, yellow-blooded sea cucumbers. You'll have everything you need. You won't be able to finish them even if you eat them every day. Han Fei looked up at the sky. Boarding a dragon boat? Not to mention anything else, I'm afraid I've already become a... He had expected that there would be people from the Sun family on the dragon boats. It was not a coincidence that there would be people from the Sun family on the dragon boats. If there were no accidents, there might be people from the Sun family on every dragon boat. Han Fei said, "You've seen a lot of things. This time, we encountered this damn sponge. Next time, we won't suffer this loss. This kind of setback can enhance our chances of survival in the infinite ocean. Humph, you're being unreasonable. Passing through the sponge area, the two of them came to an area overgrown with seaweed. There were many sea urchins of different shapes and colors here. Occasionally, eels would drill out of the seaweed. However, when they saw Han Fei and Yang Ruyun, they drilled into the seaweed again. Han Fei even saw a pure green octopus, which was disguised as seaweed. However, this time Han Fei didn't act rashly. Even if I want to eat octopuses, I'll eat normal octopuses. This thing is colorful. God knows if it's poisonous or not. Half an hour later, the two came to a depth of 1,500 kilometers. Han Fei was shocked. What blocked Han Fei's eyes was a curtain-like seaweed wall. The scene in front of him was as if a wall of seaweed had been erected in front of him. Looking left and right, it seemed that there was no end. Looking up, it seemed that this seaweed extended from the surface of the sea to the bottom of the sea. That scene was spectacular. On those seaweeds, Han Fei saw a lot of barnacles and sea melon seeds. Of course, these were not the only two. There were also some green spiders crawling on the seaweed, and there were also twisted worms moving on the seaweed. There were also colorful sea urchins hanging on the seaweed. As long as you looked carefully, you would find many kinds of strange creatures. From a distance, this wall looked like a green curtain, dotted with colorful stars. Han Fei looked at this scene in a daze. How can this thing get in? Not to mention Han Fei, even Yang Ruoyun was shocked. At this moment, she also widened her eyes and looked at the wonder of the seabed curiously. Yang Ruoyun said via voice transmission, "I thought that the seaweed wall was just a rumor. There should be a way. But I didn't expect that there was really no way." Han Fei almost vomited blood. "So, you didn't make a guide?" Yang Ruoyun shook her head. "I've seen records and books that there is a seaweed wall in the undersea prairie, which can resist the attack of fish tides and give birth to all creatures. The height of the wall is as high as the sky. The thickness of the wall can stop flood dragons and divine turtles. I thought it was just exaggerated." Han Fei swallowed. "That's really good writing, Yang Ruoyun." The two of them stared at the seaweed wall with widened eyes. In the end, Han Fei suggested, "Why don't we try swimming upstream?" Yang Ruoyun nodded. The two swam straight to the surface of the sea and swam nearly a kilometer. When the seaweed vines on the surface of the sea almost reached their faces, Han Fei finally admitted that there was really no gap for them to crawl through. The two of them landed on the bottom of the sea again. Han Fei looked at the seaweed wall and said leisurely, "It can stop flood dragons and divine turtles. With our level, the flood dragons can even slap us to death with their tails. We can't force our way through," Yang Ruoyun agreed. "Of course we can't force our way through. We have to go underground." Han Fei agreed. They indeed had to go underground. Although drilling holes was not very elegant, it was better than stupidly drilling into the seaweed wall. If some poisonous vines or strange trees suddenly popped out of the seaweed, they might not be able to cut through them even if they had knives all over their bodies. With a thought, the nine-tailed mantis shrimp appeared in front of Han Fei. Han Fei kicked the nine-tailed mantis shrimp's butt. "Dig a hole. Your master wants to go in." With that, Han Fei glanced at Yang Ruoyun and said, "There is no entrance above, so we can only go underground. If that's the case, the ambush you mentioned, is it underground?" Yang Ruoyun nodded. "If there is no accident, it should be." The nine-tailed mantis shrimp grunted and dug a hole. Every time its master called it out, it was either digging a hole or fighting. Didn't it need rest? At the very least, finding a partner for me would be fine. Han Fei and Yang Ruoyun followed behind the nine-tailed mantis shrimp, only to see its nine tails digging in the soil and its two forelimbs scraping out soil from time to time. Yang Ruoyun asked in surprise, "Is your contractual spiritual beast really an exotic one?" Han Fei nodded. "I can't deal with a legendary one." Yang Ruoyun was surprised. "Amazing. It's the first time I know that a creature can dig holes so fast." Han Fei couldn't help but smile. "That's not possible. Crabs can also dig holes. If you can catch an exotic crab, it can also dig a hole for you in minutes." If crabs can't do it, lobsters can also do it. Yang Ruoyun expressed no interest, but secretly rejoiced. Fortunately, she cooperated with Han Fei. It was very safe along the way. Apart from the random explosions in the sponge area, it could be said that nothing else had happened. They didn't know how far the nine-tailed mantis shrimp had dug. Anyway, it dug up a large area of roots. These roots even wanted to entangle them. Han Fei and Yang Ruoyun were immediately busy. Both of them held knives in both hands and kept cutting the roots. Han Fei had been perceiving. When he found that the nine-tailed mantis shrimp was digging slower and slower, he kicked the nine-tailed mantis shrimp's butt. Dig down. Yang Ruoyun was speechless. Is this how you treat your contractual spiritual beast? I really feel sorry for this contractual spiritual beast. It has such a master. After a while, Han Fei looked excited. He found several holes nearby. In the soil, there were really people lurking. Chapter 345. The underground was dark and turbid, and visibility was almost impossible. Everything depended on perception. However, the nine-tailed mantis shrimp must have made some noise when it dug, so Han Fei and Yang Ruoyun's location was completely exposed. Han Fei asked, "What should we do if we're ambushed in such a place?" Yang Ruoyun simply responded, "Kill. Those who dare to come here to ambush us can't be too weak. Don't show any mercy." Yang Ruoyun stood still and asked telepathically, "Are we ambushed?" Han Fei nodded. "Yes, but it seems that there are only two of them." In the darkness, Yang Ruoyun's expression changed slightly. "Change our route." Han Fei asked, "Why?" Yang Ruoyun quickly explained, "If it were you, would you dare to ambush two people in the depths of the seaborne grassland?" Han Fei replied, "I do. But with my current strength, I dare." Yang Ruoyun, Han Fei suddenly said, "Wait a minute, don't be silly. If the ambushers are as strong as me, they must have a lot of good stuff on them." Yang Ruoyun stopped. "What are you trying to say?" Yang Ruoyun had a bad feeling. Han Fei was too strong, and he was neither good nor evil. Although he was not a villain, he was not a gentleman either. At this moment, Han Fei was already thinking of robbing others. Sure enough, in the next moment, Han Fei said, "Keep going." Yang Ruoyun asked, "What about you?" Han Fei said, "It's okay. I'll catch up with you." Han Fei controlled a circle of blue sea wandering dragon daggers and continued to dig holes in the mud like a drill. In the blink of an eye, he disappeared from Yang Ruoyun's perception. "Asshole, you used me as bait." Yang Ruoyun gnashed her teeth. "Why did I run into such a bastard? Aren't you here for treasure hunting? Why did you suddenly have the idea of robbing them?" Han Fei didn't know what Yang Ruoyun was thinking. Anyway, his perception range was very large, and everything within 300 meters was under his control. He crawled into the underground tunnel dug by someone else and was still hundreds of meters away from the two people. Under Han Fei's feet, a concealment array was quickly formed with spiritual energy. At this moment, Han Fei wished he was a hunter. In this way, he could quietly approach the two people who were lying in ambush. Han Fei raised the blue sea wandering dragon bow and gathered 1,600 points of spiritual energy into an arrow. Not far away, the two advanced dangling fishers were listening carefully to the noises above. Suddenly, one of them said, "Hey, don't you feel that the spiritual chi seems to have suddenly become denser?" Another person frowned. "It seems so. Is there a spirit gatherer in the team above gathering spiritual energy?" Shio. Just as they were discussing, their faces changed drastically. They turned around almost at the same time, activated their spiritual energy protective covers, and fused with their spiritual beasts. Boom! Above, Yang Ruoyun's expression changed. She gritted her teeth and disappeared. Bastard! Below, Han Fei's sneak attack succeeded. The two advanced dangling fishers finally came back to themselves at the moment of life and death. At this moment, one of them was blasted away. His arms were a bloody mess. There was another guy with a dagger in his hand. One of his show was shot, and one of his hands was trembling. As the saying goes, when two sides meet on a narrow path, the one with the bigger fist is the final word. The underground passage was not wide, and Han Fei covered it with the water-dividing seal, which played a perfect defense almost at the same time as the attack. Electric Soul Strike. Absolute Shadow Stab. With a sizzle, a large number of flashing blue electric arcs burst out of the water, and Han Fei shuddered from the electric shock. But to the two of them's surprise, Han Fei managed to block it. The two of them were smashed away again. The weight of the water-dividing seal and Han Fei's huge strength blew them away even though they were advanced dangling fishers. At this moment, all the blue sea wandering dragon daggers came out. But beside the two of them, Yang Ruoyun's dagger had also arrived. But even a seriously injured advanced dangling fisher wouldn't be easily defeated. Yang Ruoyun exchanged a dozen blows with one of them in the blink of an eye, and then she was hit 3 times by the two of them. In the blink of an eye, Yang Ruoyun had exchanged more than a dozen blows with one of them. Then she was attacked by the two of them together. She was hit 3 times and was forced to retreat. These two are mine. Don't fight with them. Yang Ruoyun was so angry that her mouth twisted. Am I fighting with you? I'm here to help you. You don't know how to appreciate my kindness. I'm here to help you, yet you don't know how to appreciate my kindness. However, Yang Ruoyun was also quite shocked. Han Fei's strength was a bit too strong. 2 advanced dangling fishers were seriously injured by him as soon as they met. What kind of strength was this? In fact, Han Fei didn't feel any pressure at all. The million knife art under the control of the saber manipulation art could be said to have reached the peak of the knife array of the dangling fishers. These 2 hunters had almost no room to resist, and their bodies were cut dozens of times. Han Fei secretly smiled. If he hadn't made the breakthrough, it might have taken him some effort, but now? To put it bluntly, he was essentially only 1 step away from an advanced dangling fisher. In terms of comprehensive strength, he was even more powerful than the opponents. If he couldn't win, wouldn't his god-level combat skills and the extremely domineering indestructible body art be in vain? The law battle skill and the incomparably tyrannical immortal body, wouldn't that be a waste of time? The 9-tailed mantis shrimp rushed in at this time, and the 9-star chain directly tied the two of them up. The 9-tailed mantis shrimp rushed in at this moment and tied up the two of them with the 9-star chain, its forelimbs twitching. If the two of them tried to escape, it was ready to smash their heads. Seeing that the mantis shrimp's hammer-like limbs were about to reach their heads, the two men's faces turned green. With a saber in each hand, Han Fei stood in front of the two and said, "When ambushing others, you must be prepared to be ambushed. Give me your sea-swallowing seashell." The two of them felt helpless. At this point, he had no choice but to hand it over. Otherwise, they could still take it if they killed him. Immediately, 2 sea-swallowing seashells floated in the water. Han Fei took it and frowned. 2 sea-swallowing seashells for 1 spiritual fruit? These two people were terrifyingly poor. Apart from the spiritual fruit, there were several spiritual weapons, dozens of magic weapons, some materials, and mid-quality pearls. Pauper. Everyone, Han Fei narrowed his eyes. I can spare you, but on one condition. Brother, speak. As long as you spare our lives are yours, Han Fei's lips curled. Let's go to the depths of the seaborne prairie. You two lead the charge. Yang Ruoyun looked at Han Fei in surprise. To her surprise, Han Fei was not going to kill them. However, she immediately understood. The road ahead was unknown, and she was afraid that there would be many dangers. Was there anything more suitable than 2 advanced dangling fishers leading the charge? The two of them shuddered when they heard that. One of them said, "Brother, we can't go deeper." Han Fei's face turned cold. Why not? One of them said in horror, "There were originally 4 of us, but one of us died in the AI. One of us died in the depths of the seaborne prairie, and another died in the depths. There are terrifying giant worms there." Giant worms? Han Fei and Yang Ruoyun looked at each other, and the latter shook her head. It's not in the records. I've never heard of it. Han Fei turned to look at the two of them and sneered. I'm not negotiating with you. You have to go whether you want to or not. If you go, you may survive. If you don't, I'll kill you right now. The two of them changed their expressions. However, they only agreed after a brief hesitation. Like Han Fei said, they might have a chance of survival if they went, and they would be killed if they didn't. Once they passed the worm nest, they might be able to get rid of Han Fei. The two of them discussed in secret and decided to take the risk. Han Fei received Yang Ruoyun's telepathic message too. Don't trust them easily. But you must kill them immediately if anything goes wrong. Otherwise, we'll be in great trouble later. Han Fei grinned. Don't worry. I know what I'm doing. A moment later, led by the two of them, Han Fei and Yang Ruoyun passed through the underground channel that had been dug. About half an hour later, the two of them suddenly turned around and said, "It's a dead end." Back then, after we escaped, we sealed off the road. Han Fei asked, "Why didn't you go around it?" One of them smiled bitterly. "How could we? There are worm nests everywhere unless we walk on the surface. But if we walk on the surface, the seaweed that is denser than the reeds will tie us up in no time." Han Fei speculated that the giant worms might be creatures similar to the giant sandworms. Since the two of them could escape, theoretically speaking, there was no reason why he couldn't escape. Nine-tailed mantis shrimp, dig into the worm nest. Seeing that the nine-tailed mantis shrimp continued to dig, Yang Ruoyun pulled Han Fei. "Are you crazy? Why are you still digging?" Han Fei shook off her hand and said solemnly, "If the many paths in front of you are all dead ends, you have to choose the relatively easy one. Since they escaped, it means that the worm nest is not so dangerous. Maybe that's the real way." Yang Ruoyun was stunned for a moment. It did make sense. However, why did Han Fei venture into the depths of the seaborne prairie? Was it just for treasure hunting? Yang Ruoyun said, "With your strength, there are countless dangerous places and secret realms in the level 3 fishery. There are countless dangerous places and secret realms in the level 3 fishery. Why do we have to go to the seaborne grassland?" Han Fei grinned and thought of the people of the Sun family. He couldn't help but say, "Because this place is suitable for a cemetery." Chapter 346. Han Fei wanted to go deep into the seaborne prairie not just for opportunities. After all, something like a fortuitous opportunity could only be obtained if you were alive. In fact, treasure hunting was only one of his purposes. He suspected that if he left the seaborne prairie in a hurry, would anyone continue to hunt him? If he encountered 5 peak-level dangling fishers in regular waters, it was hard to say whether or not he could survive. After all, he had been heavily wounded in 2 battles. It was not hard to imagine how difficult it would be. The seaborne prairie, on the other hand, was full of unknown dangers. For Han Fei, every danger was both a danger and a barrier. If more people from the Sun family came after him, this complicated environment would be more suitable for him. In fact, Han Fei's intuition was very accurate, but he didn't know how powerful the big families were. At this moment, in the place where the monstrous octopus fought, a group of 15 people was following a young man. "Young Master Mu, they've all disappeared. I'm afraid they've already died." The young man closed his eyes and put his hands behind his back. He raised one of his hands and a green snake dashed out of his sleeve. Very soon he found a few places. The young man said casually, "All 5 of them died here. Their flesh and blood have been swallowed by the ocean, and their bones are buried in the sand. Han Fei has already escaped." Behind the young man, many people were shocked. All 5 peak-level dangling fishers were dead? Someone dug up the place where the green snake crawled. Very soon, broken bones were dug out. The man scolded, "Sun Chi, did you run into any unusual creatures? These bones seem to have been bitten by a certain creature. They're incomplete and have teeth marks." Sun Chi was the one who escaped earlier. He shook his head in confusion. "I didn't run into any when I left." "Useless." The young man waved his hand. "Don't argue." The sand was loosening, and the green snake pulled out a gigantic snake skull. Everybody held their breath. The snake skull was so ferocious that its teeth were glittering coldly. The young man smiled casually. "An exotic creature. This must be one of its skulls. Interesting. As it happens, I've long heard that the seaborne prairie has built seaweed walls underwater. Now that I'm here, it would be a shame if I didn't take a look." Boom! The channel was broken through. Looking at the huge and long pit, Han Fei felt his blood freeze. At first glance, he saw a huge and fat worm that was more than 30 meters long and 5 to 6 meters wide wriggling in the worm pit. Behind it, feces flowed out from time to time. The lines of a sea. A string of data appeared in his eyes. Named dead leaf worm, introduction. Its body is huge, and it is formed by countless dry leaf worms. During battle, it would disintegrate and cause a plague of insects. Once possessed by the dry leaf worm, it would absorb the life essence of living beings. Because the individual withered leaf worms were weak, they were not classified as wondrous. Level 34, quality, rare, contains spiritual energy greater than 1999 points, effect, inedible, collectible, none, unabsorbable. Han Fei wanted to run away, but he held back in the end. It's actually a dry leaf worm. Yang Ruoyun said in surprise, "You know this kind of giant worm?" Han Fei nodded slightly. Of course he did. In fact, what was really famous about the dry leaf worm was not these worms themselves, but the spiritual plant hidden in the worm nest, the dry leaf worm grass. According to the Encyclopedia of Spiritual Plants, there was a strange grass in the sea that looked like a worm and had a withered color. If you touched it, your skin would rot in 3 breaths and your life would dry up in 9 breaths. How poisonous it was! Han Fei couldn't help but worry. Although he hadn't seen this dry leaf worm grass yet, he was afraid that even dangling fishers wouldn't dare to touch it. Of course, although the dry leaf worm grass was extremely poisonous, it was not impossible to restrain it. According to the Encyclopedia of Spiritual Plants, this kind of spiritual grass would turn poison into treasure after absorbing enough vitality. Han Fei was a little tempted. This was the most poisonous and the most precious spiritual grass he had seen so far. However, this dry leaf worm was too disgusting. Seeing this big fat worm made of countless small worms, Han Fei felt his blood freeze. Yang Ruoyun asked, What should we do?" The two of them wanted to retreat. However, they were blocked by the 9-tailed mantis shrimp and couldn't retreat even half a step. Han Fei said, "Don't try to run. Otherwise, I'll knock you to death." One of them said, "Brother, we can't defeat this worm. Whether we dig to the side or go around, we will eventually dig into the worm nest." Han Fei asked in surprise, "Are there many such worm nests?" "Many. So, it's impossible to go deep underground." Han Fei smiled disdainfully. "Then what if we continue to dig down? Are all these worm nests down there?" The two of them shook their heads like a rattle. "No, we can't dig. Above us are big worms, and if we dig down 100 meters, there are countless small worms. That's a real worm pit." Han Fei was a little speechless. This is not easy. If it were clam worms, it would be fine. After all, clam worms couldn't absorb vitality. Besides, clam worms were not made of small worms. Not good, there are worms crawling over. Yang Ruoyun's face changed greatly and she immediately pulled Han Fei back. Yang Ruoyun said, "Go up and rush out." Han Fei frowned. "It's seaweed outside. Do you dare to enter?" Yang Ruoyun nodded. "I have to try." Han Fei narrowed his eyes slightly and finally nodded. "Okay, let's go up." The other two were still reluctant to go up. However, Han Fei stabbed them in the back. "Now, don't even think about running away. Otherwise, I'll kill you now." The 9-tailed mantis shrimp was digging quickly, followed by the 2 hunters, and Yang Ruoyun and Han Fei. Cannon fodder naturally had the awareness of being cannon fodder. Because Han Fei and the others were making a lot of noise, countless arm-long dry leaf worms were wriggling against the soil behind them. Han Fei said, "Hurry up, dig." The cave was only about 100 meters from the ground, and it only took a few minutes. The moment the 9-tailed mantis shrimp broke out of the soil, it instantly turned into a ray of light and was taken back by Han Fei. And the 2 hunters had cursed Han Fei countless times in their hearts at this moment. The moment the 2 broke out of the soil, they looked at each other and said, "Run separately. Otherwise, you and I will eventually die while exploring the path." Yang Ruoyun quickly said, "They ran away." Han Fei responded unhurriedly, "I know. If we don't run, how can we explore the way? Just find someone to follow." When Han Fei and Yang Ruoyun came out, they saw two big holes drilled in the seaweed. Han Fei randomly chose one and got in. At the same time, the blue sea wandering dragon daggers circled around him, frantically crushing the seaweed, trying to drill a bigger hole. Puff! Just when Han Fei chased them for less than 100 meters, something appeared in the seaweed. It was a green vine, like a spirit snake, breaking through the seaweed and entangling him. Han Fei seemed to have expected that there would be something, so he was not in a hurry. He raised the blade in his hand and chopped off the vines with a single slash. Gurgle. From the hole behind him, a large number of small dry leaf worms swarmed out. However, to Han Fei's surprise, as soon as these worms swarmed out, a large number of seaweed entangled them. At first, large tracts of seaweed withered and finally turned into pieces. After a stalemate, a large number of dry leaf worms were parasitized by the seaweed. Their bodies were filled with seaweed and finally disintegrated. Huh, Han Fei perked up. I've got an idea. Han Fei was excited, only to find that Yang Ruoyun was struggling to cut the vines and seaweed. Yang Ruoyun said, "There are more and more vines and seaweed. We can't run far." Han Fei looked at the seawater around him, which was almost dyed green. The speed at which the blue sea wandering dragon daggers stirred was also getting slower and slower. At this moment, Han Fei felt a chill on his back and something seemed to be coming over his head. Water-stirring seal technique. As the big seal flew across the sky, a weird vine like a long snake bombarded the water-dividing seal. Han Fei turned his head, only to find that Yang Ruoyun was hit and fell heavily to the ground, almost wrapped in seaweed and turned into a grass doll. Han Fei did not immediately turn around and return. Just now, it was Yang Ruoyun who proposed to dig a hole. In fact, there was another way just now, which was to retreat. Yang Ruoyun did not choose to retreat. Anyway, she chose to take the risk, which was unreasonable. Was this woman very reckless? Or did she actually know something? Was that why she wanted to dig it out? Han Fei pretended to be approached by the weird vines and ignored Yang Ruoyun. After 2 minutes, "Han Fei, do you still want your treasure trove? Come and save me." In fact, Yang Ruoyun's every move was in his perception. She had been tied up by dozens of vines, and because of the seaweed entanglement, she was unable to move, so she finally asked Han Fei for help. Fuck! Seeing that he couldn't find out anything, Han Fei immediately turned around and swept away the blue sea wandering dragon daggers. Puff! The vines were cut up. Han Fei landed in front of Yang Ruoyun, looked up, and looked at the hundreds of green vines surging over his head. Han Fei frowned. "There is a big vine above. These are just branches. We have to go back." Chapter 347. Han Fei didn't feel very good. These little vines were too easy to cut. This doesn't make sense. Are the vines in the seaweed wall so weak? Then wouldn't they become decorations? Are they trying to lure the enemy in? Han Fei summoned the 9-tailed mantis shrimp and kicked it twice. Dig a hole and drill through the bottom. Han Fei turned his head to look at Yang Ruoyun. "Are you so weak? What can the green vines do to you?" Yang Ruoyun said angrily, "Green vines? Look at how many spiritual weapons you have and how many do I have? Just put away all your spiritual weapons and try." Han Fei agreed. "Forget it. Let's continue to drill into the ground. I don't feel safe. Those two guys escaped, so they should have made some noise. But there's no noise at all. Did they really run away?" In fact, the seaweed could never be cut down. In the seaweed wall, there were more than billions of seaweeds. This was not something that could be cleaned by manpower. The 9-tailed mantis shrimp dug a big hole in the soil. In just a moment, 3 or 5 holes were drilled out. Han Fei said, "Keep drilling." Yang Ruoyun asked, "Aren't we going down?" Han Fei smiled disdainfully. "Those bugs are afraid of grass. I want to see which one is stronger, the bugs or these seaweeds." Just when Han Fei was cutting the vines and waiting for the 9-tailed mantis shrimp to dig a hole, a figure suddenly appeared 100 meters away. It was one of the 2 people who had just run out. However, before he spoke, Han Fei immediately broke out in a cold sweat. That bastard only had the upper half of his body left. As for the lower half of his body, it had long disappeared, replaced by a body made of vines. Han Fei exclaimed, "Fuck!" Yang Ruiyun was horrified. "Human, your strength has been recognized by me. I won't embarrass you." "Hiss, what's talking?" Han Fei was horrified. He grabbed Yang Ruiyun and drilled into the hole. Yang Ruiyun said, "Someone is talking." Han Fei said, "Bullshit. Anyone who calls you a human in the sea is a monster. There are alien creatures in this seaweed wall." Han Fei's heart was pounding. That thing had turned people into ornaments and ran to him. It was obviously not a good demon. Han Fei didn't care how many holes the nine-tailed mantis shrimp had dug. He attached himself to the nine-tailed mantis shrimp and plunged the 9-star chain into the ground. At the same time, 5 or 6 balls of spiritual energy were thrown into those holes. Bang, bang, bang. Spiritual energy exploded, and dust flew everywhere. The scene was murky. Feeling the countless vines coming at him, Han Fei gritted his teeth. Boom! The giant worm was furious. It raised its head and roared at Han Fei. As it opened its mouth, a large number of small dry leaf worms gushed out like a wave. Han Fei's face was all dark. The 9-star chain stabbed the nest randomly and he hurriedly moved away. However, what was even more tragic was that large patches of seaweed and vines had also drilled in through the hole, almost covering half of the nest in a moment. Han Fei's eyes almost popped out. Seriously? Aren't they supposed to reinforce and restrain each other? Why were these seaweeds so fierce? Human, I won't hurt you. I just want to chat with you. Fuck you. We have nothing to talk about. Kill this dry leaf worm first if you have the ability. Well, that's not too difficult. On the other side, Han Fei was ready to dig a hole and leave. In the end, a large number of vines and seaweed surrounded them and directly swept towards the giant dry leaf worm. Han Fei's blood froze. What kind of monster is this fake? Is it really fighting against the dry leaf worm? Almost in the blink of an eye, all the seaweed and vines that stretched in from the outside withered. But the next moment, there were still endless seaweed and vines rushing in. Han Fei said to her via voice transmission, "This thing is definitely not a good thing. Tell me, how can I run?" "Don't hide it, hurry up." Yang Ruiyun's face changed. "I really don't know." Han Fei sneered. "Who are you kidding? If you really don't know, how dare you run into the depths of the seaborne grassland? When you saw this monster, you didn't say a word. Did you really not know its existence? Let me tell you, if this dry leaf worm is no match for this monster, I will immediately leave you and run away. I can still find a safe place. But you, don't even think about getting my help." With that, Han Fei let go of Yang Ruiyun and dug a hole with the 9-tailed mantis shrimp. After a while, a large number of dry leaf worms were filled with life energy and turned into a mass of sticky liquid. The huge dry leaf worm had shrunk to nearly half its size in less than half an hour. The strange voice still echoed in Han Fei's ears. "Human, I have no intention of hurting you. Then go away. Don't block the way. Human, I need something. I need you to find it for me." Han Fei chuckled and responded, "Just tell me what it is. If I can find it, I will definitely find it for you. If you can't find it, don't bother me." However, the voice suddenly disappeared. However, many vines and seaweed separated and rushed towards Han Fei and Yang Ruiyun respectively. Han Fei said angrily, "Yang Ruiyun." Yang Ruiyun glanced at Han Fei indifferently, stretched out her hand, and 2 flash stones flew to Han Fei. Han Fei thought to himself, "Sure enough, this woman has been prepared. 1 flash stone can allow me to escape dozens of kilometers away, but this woman gave me 2 so casually. She must have more on her body." Han Fei was speechless. "What's the use of 2? Give me a few more." Yang Ruiyun took a deep look at Han Fei. "Sorry, I have limited flash stones. Life and death are decreed by fate. Thank you for helping me get here. I've already surpassed my own expectations. I wish you good luck." In front of Han Fei, Yang Ruiyun disappeared in the blink of an eye. "Fuck you, Yang Ruiyun. Don't let me find you again, or I will kill you." Han Fei was speechless. In fact, he knew everything, but he was still thinking that everything was under his control. Yang Ruoyun borrowed his strength, and he also borrowed Yang Ruoyun's understanding of this place. It was a win-win situation. However, it turned out that he was the one who was fooled in the end. Han Fei wondered if he was hit in the head by an iron-head fish. However, this time it was really a coincidence, and he asked to follow her. Is this the legendary God's Pit? The kind that traps himself? Where is that girl? Han Fei's face was black. Hey, what's your name? Did the dry leaf worms offend you? Why do you want to kill them? Han Fei looked at the dry leaf worms that had been wiped out, and his eyelids twitched. I need to release the power of life occasionally. These worms are very powerful, just enough to satisfy me. The corners of Han Fei's mouth twitched. So, you are seaweed? Or vines? I am me. I have no name. I can feel a familiar aura on you, so I asked you for help. Then Han Fei saw 2 vines stretching out. 2 people were hanging on the vines. They were the 2 cannon fodder hunters from before. At this moment, they were all dead, and a large amount of seaweed grew out of their bodies. Han Fei was horrified. What do you mean? They are not dead. Han Fei's eyes widened. Half of their bodies are gone, and you tell me they are not dead? However, in the next moment, Han Fei saw these 2 people open their eyes at the same time. 2 strong life energy radiated from the bodies of these 2 people. Help me. Me kill me, Han Fei swallowed. They couldn't speak clearly because they also had seaweed in their mouths. However, Han Fei could feel that they were supported by a strong life force. It was better to die than to live like this. Swish, the blue sea wandering dragon daggers pierced through their skulls and Han Fei freed them. Originally, these 2 people were cannon fodder, but it didn't mean they had to be tortured even in death. Han Fei gritted his teeth. What the hell do you want? If you want to ask for help, just stand in front of me. As he spoke, Han Fei held a flash stone in his hand. But he was prepared to run away with the flash stone first and then hide in Forge the Universe. No matter how powerful this guy was, it was impossible for him not to find him. At this moment, the dry leaf worms had basically been wiped out. A worm nest had turned countless seaweed and vines into ashes, but it was still not enough. Han Fei overestimated the dry leaf worms and underestimated the monsters in the seaweed city wall. At this moment, right below the place where the worms gathered, a finger-long worm floated up. Han Fei was slightly surprised. Dry leaf worm grass? The data in his eyes turned real. Named dry leaf worm grass, introduction, grows in the nest of the dry leaf worms. It is extremely poisonous in the first 9 years. Dangling fishers who touch it will die in 9 seconds. Hanging fishers who touch it can't live more than 3 years. After 9 years, it turns poison into medicine and absorbs vitality from the outside world. It ripens in another 9 years and becomes a spiritual fruit. It contains a lot of energy. Level, spiritual level quality, ultra quality, contains spiritual energy greater than 62 points. Effect, when eaten, one's physique will be greatly improved. Current status, 7th year. Chapter 348. Han Fei only felt that the scene at this moment was very weird. The seaweed monster did not seem to care about vitality. A large number of seaweed and vines wrapped around the dry leaf worm grass. Thousands of vines turned from green to yellow, and a large area of seaweed withered in an instant. The voice sounded again, "This thing is quite interesting." It was so small, but it could absorb a huge amount of life force. Unfortunately, after a while, it's full. Han Fei. In Han Fei's eyes, the dry leaf worm grass was maturing quickly. In just a moment, it had become a super tonic. Gulp. Han Fei was lost for words. Is your vitality infinite? Han Fei didn't panic anymore. He couldn't figure out what this guy meant at all. Why did he mutilate himself in front of her? Could it be that this was the so-called self-mutilation to intimidate others? If that was the case, then the seaweed monster had succeeded. Han Fei was indeed shocked. A vine wrapped the matured big cordyceps grass and delivered it to Han Fei. Then it said, This thing is useless to me, but it seems to be an extremely rare treasure for human beings. Han Fei thought to himself, of course. This was a super tonic. Don't look down on the small amount of spiritual qi. The amount of pure energy it contained was too much. Moreover, it seemed to contain a large amount of life force. Use this. The effect of cultivating the indestructible body was not as good as the fish fire, but it was still half as good. Do you want it? Han Fei suddenly came back to himself and suppressed his desire. Tell me, what do you want exactly? Let me tell you, there's no such thing as a familiar smell on me. Don't spout nonsense like that. It's impossible for me to believe you. Tell me your motive. However, the figure said very seriously, no, you do have a familiar scent on you. A few years ago, there seemed to be a creature that ran through here. I didn't stop him. Yes, you guys seem to have the same scent. Han Fei wondered, a few years ago? At that time, let alone San. The level 3 fishery? I'm still in the ordinary fishery. The voice seemed a little confused. I don't know. However, I can confirm that both of you have the same smell. I don't care what the smell is. Don't touch me. If you dare to touch me, I'll crush my flash stone and run away immediately. Also, what do you want me to help you with? I will think about it. Han Fei thought, this guy is so strong that there's no need to fool me. Even if it really killed him, what was the point? Existences that could speak like this were all unique characters with great potential. The intelligence of these fellows was not low. There was no reason for them to mess with him. Help me snatch a fruit. Ah! Han Fei was stunned. He blurted out, you're so powerful, snatching a fruit is not a problem for you, the voice answered. I can't leave this region of seaweed, and the fruit is 1,000 miles away. Han Fei thought of something. Was this guy talking about the center of the seaborne prairie? I haven't even reached the central area yet, but I've already met a strong master like you. Would there be other powerful creatures in the central region? If there is, how can I be his opponent? No, you're special. Just like the creature I saw last time, although it couldn't beat me, it seemed that I couldn't kill you. You should be able to avoid my pursuit, right? Han Fei was silent for a while. Who the hell is this bastard talking about? San, who the hell do I know in the level 3 fishery? Is it Ren Tianfei? No, Ren Tianfei is an old monster from hundreds of years ago. At his level, come to the level 3 fishery? The level 3 fishery? This seaweed monster shouldn't be able to stop him. But if it's not Ren Tianfei, who is it? That cheap father of his? Could it be old Jiang? Sister Qin? Fuck, could it be Tango? Then Han Fei shook his head slightly. It can't be Tango. A few years ago? No matter how fast Tang Ji's strength grew, he couldn't have become a dangling fisher a few years ago. Forget it, Han Fei didn't continue to guess. As this seaweed monster said, he was not afraid of him. Especially now that he had flash stones, Han Fei raised his head and said, okay, I'll help you pick it. But just one dry leafworm grass is not enough. 10, wow, Han Fei swallowed. This fucking seaweed monster is too fucking awesome. How could he just casually take out 10 of these things? Although Han Fei hadn't taken this dry leafworm grass yet, the energy contained in it was definitely not to be underestimated. Just think of the huge life energy just now. However, Han Fei didn't agree immediately. The bigger the energy, the greater the price he might have to pay. Han Fei asked, what does the fruit you are looking for look like? Do you know what it is called? The seaweed monster said leisurely, I don't know. However, that kind of fruit is as red as blood and occasionally turns into red fish. Puff, Han Fei was dumbfounded. Is this fucking fruit intelligent? It can even turn into fish? Are you fucking kidding me? The seaweed monster said lightly, it doesn't hurt to have a try. Whether you can get it or not, this dry leafworm grass is yours. With that, the vine put down the dry leafworm grass. Han Fei reached out and took it. Of course, he would take it. However, Han Fei's eyes flashed. Promise me 2 more conditions. Go ahead. Han Fei said, I need spiritual spring. The more the better. Since you are so strong, you should have noticed that I can absorb a lot of spiritual energy. The seaweed monster thought for a while and said, I have a lot of spiritual spring, but I won't give it to you. After you get the spiritual fruit, I can give you 1,000,000 points of spiritual spring. Han Fei was speechless. No, I need spiritual spring to fight now. You see, I just wasted tens of thousands to avoid you. However, the seaweed monster said leisurely, the spiritual energy you just consumed did not exceed 10,000 points in total. Han Fei, the seaweed monster continued, I can give you 100,000 points of spiritual energy. Sometimes, too much spiritual energy is not a good thing. Give me the fruit. You will get more than what you pay for it. Han Fei's eyes almost narrowed into a line. This guy is so cunning. It's afraid that if it gives me too much spiritual energy, I will run away. But 100,000 points of spiritual energy? What the hell is that? It's just the amount of a spiritual fruit. It may not even be enough for me to run away. Seeing that the spiritual energy seemed to be useless, Han Fei said again, if my guess is right, in the next few days, there may be many peak-level dangling fishers passing by the seaweed wall. Help me kill them, okay? I can help you stop them, but whether they can kill them depends on their means. Han Fei frowned. This doesn't work, that doesn't work. This seaweed monster's answers are all ambiguous. I can't catch it. However, Han Fei didn't make any more requests. He grabbed the dry leaf worm grass and stuffed it directly into Forge the Universe. Let's get out of this damn place first. Something that even this seaweed monster wants very much must not be ordinary. Maybe if I get it, I don't need to exchange it with him at all. Han Fei nodded. Okay, I promise to help you find the fruit. Now let me go. The seaweed monster said, you can come up. I won't stop you. Han Fei thought for a moment. It doesn't seem to be a big problem if I go out. After all, I have a flash stone. If this guy makes any strange moves, I can just run away. If it doesn't work, I can always be ready to enter Forge the Universe. When the seaweed receded, Han Fei got out of the cave. After coming out, the seaweed really opened the way and didn't stop Han Fei anymore. The vines also disappeared. Han Fei looked around and said, Hey, who the hell are you? What do you look like? Come out and meet me. We will meet if we are destined to. Humph. Han Fei remained vigilant and walked unhurriedly. He didn't dare to use combat skills to speed up, in case the seaweed monster played any tricks. About 2 hours later, when Han Fei was about to walk out of this seaweed forest, his eyes suddenly lit up. Am I finally going out? However, just when Han Fei was in a daze, he suddenly felt a pain in his foot. Han Fei suddenly used a combat skill to break through the last blockade of seaweed. He looked down and saw that his ankle was buckled with a circle of green seaweed. Fuck, Han Fei was infuriated. Who would have thought that I would fail at the last moment? Han Fei was furious. Asshole, what did you do to me? The seaweed monster's voice was leisurely. This is a soul lock of mine, representing the contract between you and me. Take back the spiritual fruit and I will help you remove it. Han Fei was furious. I was fucking tricked again. I really want the 9-tailed mantis shrimp to kill him. Spiritual energy, give it to me. Han Fei gritted his teeth. When a mass of spiritual spring flew to Han Fei, he took it and turned to leave. The seaweed monster's voice was leisurely. Don't try to erase this soul lock, or it will self-destruct. Han Fei narrowed his eyes and said without looking back, remember to help me kill those peak-level dangling fishers. Chapter 349. Han Fei didn't look back because he was afraid that he would go crazy and rush in to hack that guy to death. From the beginning to the end, he didn't even see the shadow of that damn thing. This feeling was very bad. After passing the Seaweed City wall, there was only ordinary seaweed for hundreds of kilometers. Seeing that he was far away from the Seaweed City wall, Han Fei sat on the ground, lifted his feet, and began to check. Name: Soul Lock's introduction, a special talent of a very few creatures. This kind of creature is made by compressing and refining a large amount of vitality, spiritual power, and spiritual energy. Once the soul lock is formed, it can sense the original body. It's often used to control other creatures and self-destruct when necessary. Level advanced, contains spiritual energy greater than 162 points. When he saw the data, Han Fei's face turned green. What if this thing blew itself up? More than 10,000 points of spiritual energy, even a fucking spiritual weapon could be blown into pieces. However, when Han Fei saw the word, absorbable, he smiled like a flower. This operation was simply a wave of 666. No wonder it was called the Demon Purification Pot. It was not worth it at all. What was worrying was that Han Fei wouldn't cooperate with a grass that he had never met at the risk of his life. I'm going to piss you off. Absorb it. The spiritual energy in the soul lock was gradually decreasing. Just after Han Fei absorbed less than 1,000 points, Han Fei suddenly felt that the soul lock slightly lit up. Han Fei was shocked. That guy was connected to this soul lock. He was really stupid. Swish, In the seaweed city wall, a huge ball-like seaweed suddenly shook. Where was his soul lock? He had just noticed something unusual, but in the blink of an eye, the soul lock had lost connection with him. Han Fei didn't know what the reaction of the grass was at this moment. He guessed that there must be an iron-head fish surging in its heart. But he didn't care. After entering Forge the Universe, no matter what it was, it couldn't sense it. Absorb it. After a while, Han Fei looked at the soul lock that had no spiritual energy and had dried up and couldn't help but chuckle. Fuck, how dare you trick me? Don't give this young master a chance. Otherwise, I'll definitely make you suffer. Without spiritual energy, the soul lock was torn off by Han Fei. Then, he raised his hand and chopped them into 17 or 18 pieces. When he reappeared, he was beaming with joy. It was a blessing in disguise. He had 1,000,000 points of spiritual energy again. To be precise, it was a little more than 90,000. Han Fei didn't care too much about the details. If he rounded it up, it would be 1,000,000. As for the 10 stalks of dry leafworm grass mentioned by the grass, Han Fei had never thought about it. He really couldn't imagine what kind of idiot would use such a huge amount of vitality to ripen 10 poisonous fruits of this level. Han Fei couldn't help but laugh, only to spit out a string of bubbles. After getting rid of the strange grass, Han Fei calmed down a little. Then he snorted heavily. Yang Ruin, this hateful woman. He was a professional at screwing over his teammates. Since they had come out, and their goal was the same, as long as she didn't die, it was only a matter of time before they met. At that time, even if she said something to the heavens, he couldn't believe it. A moment later, Han Fei saw many undulating creatures in the distance. Because it was too far away, Han Fei couldn't see it clearly. This time, Han Fei learned his lesson and didn't rush to that place in a hurry. He activated his perception in advance and walked over step by step. It didn't matter if he walked slowly, what mattered most was stability. Not long after, Han Fei found a few round clams in front of him. Seeing the movement, these clams quickly shut their mouths and then arched their bodies into the mud. Clams? As far as Han Fei knew, clams had always been the lowest level creatures. Whether in the ordinary fishery or the level 1 or level 2 fishery, the seabed was almost covered with all kinds of clams and shells. In the level 3 fishery, Han Fei saw a lot of clams in the level 3 fishery, but he didn't have time to deal with them. But Han Fei suddenly remembered that since he entered the seaborne grassland, he didn't seem to find many clams at the bottom of the sea. Was there anything different about these clams? In his eyes, data appeared. Name: colorful crystal clam. Introduction: a mutant clam that gives birth to colorful pearls. It contains all kinds of colors and reflects the colors of all things. Level 27 quality rare, contains spiritual energy greater than 56 points, edible effect, long-term consumption can increase blood energy. Collectible colorful pearls. Han Fei was slightly surprised. Colorful pearls? What are they? Without hesitation, Han Fei picked up a knife and chopped on the shell of a colorful crystal clam with a clang. With a crack, the colorful crystal muscle was split into 2 halves. After all, it was only a level 27 creature, and it could be killed by Han Fei with 1 slash. However, before Han Fei picked up the clam meat, he saw many bright lotus flowers floating over from not far away. Yes, Han Fei was sure that his eyes were not deceiving him. A group of tricolored lotuses was swirling towards him. Cautiously, Han Fei immediately retreated. After retreating dozens of meters, Han Fei saw flower-like small fish floating on the lotus seeds of the tricolor lotus flowers. Wow, that's amazing! There are really miracles in life. What the hell is this? In his eyes, data appeared again. Han Fei blinked his eyes, looking at the lotus fish that were spread out vertically and horizontally, and couldn't help but like them. This fish was about the same size as Little White, but it was more colorful. Although it was not as good-looking as Little White, it was chubby and quite good. On the heads of these lotus fish, there was a small flower of different colors. There were almost all kinds of colors. It was not an exaggeration to say that it was a group of flowers competing for beauty. Han Fei had seen two kinds of plant fish. The first kind was the wooden fish, which was not aesthetic. The second kind was this lotus fish. Its body and fins seemed to be made of lotus leaves. It was a non-aggressive fish. At this moment, a group of chubby and cute lotus fish surrounded the colorful crystal mussel that was killed by Han Fei. Multiple lotus seeds formed a small circle, which was quite magical. When a few purple pearls floated out of the mussel meat, the colorful crystal mussel began to sink slowly, gradually sinking into the sand. Han Fei couldn't help but curiously put his head up. As a result, a group of lotus fish pouted their mouths and kept pointing at Han Fei's head, cheeks, chest. It seemed that this little lotus fish was angry that Han Fei killed the colorful crystal mussel. Han Fei was also speechless. I just killed a sea mussel. Why are they angry? Don't many fish like to eat sea mussels? Why are these lotus fish so friendly to sea mussels here? Those lotus fish seemed to be angry and calmed down quickly. They seemed very happy to see Han Fei. 5 or 6 lotus fish had already begun to rotate around Han Fei. As they rotated, Han Fei found that colorful stardust scattered from their bodies. Suddenly, Han Fei felt as if he had been sprinkled with silver light powder and felt uncomfortable all over. Han Fei touched the heads of these little fish and played with them for a while. Then he saw how these lotus fish ate. It turned out that they didn't eat meat at all. What they ate was the colorful pearls in these colorful crystal mussels. No wonder they looked so beautiful. Han Fei only stayed for less than half an hour and was ready to move forward. But when Han Fei was about to move forward, he saw a large group of hundreds of lotus fish blocking in front of him. They just wouldn't let him go. Han Fei smiled and said, "Don't make trouble, I still have something to do. I will come back to play with you later." Ah! Han Fei suddenly turned around and found that a big lotus fish had bitten his clothes and dragged him back. Han Fei couldn't help but frown. They don't let me go forward. Is there something ahead? Chapter 350. On the way to the seaborne prairie, Han Fei only felt tired because he had encountered all kinds of things. At this moment, he finally met a group of obedient and harmless lotus fish. It felt more like they were trapped here by something. Han Fei touched the large lotus fish, and regardless of whether the other party understood him, he said via voice transmission, "I'll go and have a look. I'm here to hunt for treasures, and I can't stay here. Otherwise, I'm afraid it will bring you disaster." He didn't know if this lotus fish understood Han Fei's meaning. Han Fei was ready to move again. Although there were still lotus fish blocking in front of Han Fei, they were not as strong as before, on the contrary. Under the leadership of the big lotus fish, a group of hundreds of lotus fish swarmed around Han Fei and swam forward. Han Fei smiled. "Why you here? Send me off? I'm awesome. You don't have to send me off." Seeing that it was useless to say anything, Han Fei didn't say anything. Thinking about it, it might be because these lotus fish were pure and hospitable. It was not a short journey. Han Fei wasn't in a hurry anyway. So, he played with the lotus fish while hurrying on his way. He didn't know if it was Han Fei's illusion, but along the way, Han Fei only felt extremely peaceful in his heart. In the neon brilliance, his spiritual power seemed to have increased again, and his perception range had obviously increased by several meters. Han Fei couldn't help but look at the lotus fish again, only to find that they were all cute and didn't seem to know what was going on. Strange, why did my spiritual power suddenly increase? Han Fei was a little surprised. Could it be that the myriad colors scattered by these lotus fish could actually improve spiritual power? Han Fei suddenly sat cross-legged, and a small piece of the god-scaring painting appeared in his mind. But unlike in the past, the effect of meditating on the god-scaring painting this time was dozens of times better than in the past. All kinds of complex lines and patterns seemed to be easier to remember. After half a day, when a piece of the god-scaring painting was completely memorized by Han Fei felt that his perception range had increased by another 50 meters. He had become a living 350 meters. When he opened his eyes, those lotus fish surrounded Han Fei, sprinkling sparkling colorful stardust from time to time. What a group of little cuties, Han Fei looked at the various colorful stardust on his body and couldn't help closing his eyes again. What is an opportunity? This was the so-called opportunity. Which dangling fisher dared to say that he could increase his perception range by 50 meters in half a day? Wenren Yu once said that when she was a great fishing master, she just tried to learn spiritual perception. Only when one reached the realm of a dangling fisher would one gradually understand and develop the ability of spiritual perception, but in fact, among the people Han Fei had met so far, even the advanced dangling fishers couldn't perceive more than 100 meters. Han Fei wasn't sure either. Under what circumstances could the so-called spiritual perception be greatly improved? But he couldn't be before becoming a peak-level dangling fisher. Half a day later, when Han Fei's perception range reached 400 meters, he seemed to hit a bottleneck. Although he could still improve, his speed was not as fast as before. Interesting. Mental perception is still limited. It's a pity that if I had enough time, I could stay here for a full month and forcefully meditate on the god-scaring painting. I'm afraid that even if my speed slows down, I can still increase it by more than 100 meters. However, Han Fei didn't intend to waste this time. He couldn't waste a whole month on the seaborne prairie. The level 3 fishery was so big that he had never been to too many places. Han Fei opened his eyes and suddenly stood up. Voila! What made Han Fei dumbfounded was that he was almost covered by the thousands of colorful stardust. As he stood up, tiny stardust particles slid off his body like fine sand. And the lotus fish around Han Fei flicked their tails from time to time and rotated the lotus seat, making the stardust fly up. Gradually, the seawater dozens of meters around seemed to change into a colorful illusion. Han Fei touched the head of the lotus fish that came over and said with a smile, "This time, I'm really leaving. If I have the chance in the future, I'll come again." With every step Han Fei took, stardust slid off his body, which looked extremely weird. But the closer Han Fei got to the AI in this water area, the more he thought about it, the more he could feel the tension of the lotus fish behind him. Gradually, the thousands of lotus fish that followed Han Fei were reduced to only a few hundred at this moment. And this number was still decreasing. Han Fei knew that danger was coming. Especially when there was only the largest lotus fish left beside Han Fei, Han Fei's heart almost jumped out of his throat. He saw a quiet sea ahead of him. It was like a clear distinction between black and white. If the place he was in right now was a flourishing and beautiful sea of lotus flowers and fish, then 100 meters away would be a cold, lonely, and desolate wasteland with no colors at all. Han Fei said, "Go back." Seeing that the big lotus fish refused to go, Han Fei didn't care about it anymore. Han Fei activated his spiritual perception and walked forward step by step. After walking for about 500 meters, the big lotus fish also stopped and looked at Han Fei reluctantly from behind. At this moment, Han Fei was standing at the forefront, looking at the scene in front of him and swallowing his saliva. This scene reminded him of the saying, "When things reach an extreme, they will move in the opposite direction." In front of him, there was a huge abyss, with no end in sight. However, this seemingly barren forbidden land wasn't really devoid of life. In the ravine, there were black insect fish, no bigger than a palm, shaped like rotten worms, with holes in their heads, and half of their bodies exposed outside. Yes, when Han Fei saw the information in his eyes, he felt goosebumps all over his body. Name: insect fish. Introduction: a combination of insect and fish, a parasitic fish species. It survives on rotten food, likes to kill each other, has a fierce and cruel temperament, and is filthy among fish. Its insects can leave the body and penetrate into the marrow. Level 9 quality rare, contains spiritual energy, 4 points, edible effect, inedible, collectible, none, unabsorbable. Fuck? What the hell is this place? How many kinds of unknown creatures are there in this damn sea? Although this insect fish was only level 9, which seemed unreasonable, he could understand it if he thought about it carefully. For example, the marching sea leeches were extremely low level and contained very little spiritual energy, but if he was really entangled by them, the consequences would be very terrible. The same was true for this kind of fish. They seemed to be low level, but the fish were dense. Han Fei could see that they were almost head to head, and he couldn't even tell which was the fish head and which was the insect head. Han Fei looked up at the sky, and there were sporadic insect fish swimming in the darkness. Han Fei wondered if he could swim over from a high place. But as soon as he wanted to try, he felt something pulling him from behind. Han Fei looked back and found that it was the lotus fish that had bitten his clothes. Han Fei said, "Phew, it's okay. If anything happens, I'll come back." After that, Han Fei quickly swam to the top of the chasm. Behind him, a pair of wings grew out, and his whole body drew a dazzling arc in the sea. However, just at the moment when Han Fei broke through the air, the abyss seemed to be in an uproar. Countless insects and fishes swept up like a storm of doomsday. Little Gold's speed was fast enough. However, no matter how fast it was, it couldn't do anything to the dense insect fish in this sea area. Han Fei frowned. He waved his hand, wrapped himself in a water ball, and activated a spiritual energy protective cover. In the school of insect fish, he dodged left and right. In this silent and dark water area, Han Fei's figure was extremely dazzling. The scene was extremely chaotic for a while. But after a while, Han Fei had lost his direction. Because as far as his perception could reach, there were all insect fish, and there was no gap in all directions. Han Fei's face became gloomy. He decided to rush out first and then choose a direction. But just as Han Fei was waving the blue sea wandering dragon daggers with murderous intent, the school of insect fish on his side suddenly made way for him. And behind that road, a lotus fish was swimming slowly. Ha! The lotus seat under the lotus fish was hovering, and a colorful mist of light spread out. Seeing this, the insect fish immediately dodged. When the lotus fish swam to Han Fei, the lotus seat under the lotus fish automatically separated and fell under Han Fei's feet. Han Fei was surprised. He knew that the lotus fish could repel filth, but he didn't know it could be so magical. The lotus fish opened the way in front of the lotus seat. One fish opened the way, and thousands of fish retreated. This scene was quite shocking to him. Han Fei couldn't help but wonder, is there such a good fish in this world? Why are they so helpful? It seems that I didn't help them but just played with them for a while. Chapter 351. This abyssal canyon was about 600 to 800 kilometers in size. Sitting on the lotus seat, Han Fei was surprised to see the sea of insects around him retreating and none of them dared to come forward. Han Fei sighed. "Hey, little lotus flower, can you understand what I say?" The lotus fish swam around Han Fei. However, at the moment, it looked a little weak and just sprinkled colorful mist occasionally. Han Fei guessed that crossing the sea of insects was not as easy as he thought. This lotus fish seemed to have paid a price, but Han Fei didn't understand why the lotus fish behaved like this. Han Fei had to think. Since entering the seaborne grassland, he had experienced a lot of dangers. Every one of them could be said to be extremely dangerous. Especially in the Seaweed City Wall, that damn place could be said to be a deadly place. It was hard for him to imagine how he could cross that damn place all the way if he didn't prepare in advance. Then he met the lotus fish. But then he met this insect fish abyss. Lotus fish could help him cross the insect fish abyss. Was this a coincidence or deliberate? Why did these two completely incompatible species live next to each other? In the end, Han Fei could only attribute it to the magic of nature. Tens of thousands of species could live in an ocean. This was a very common sense thing to begin with. For example, seabed volcanic craters, geothermal springs, coral clusters, deep-sea jungles. These places actually had their own complete ecological chains. Maybe the fish here were too strange, so he felt it was strange. After all, the lotus fish abyss was very loving. After crossing the insect fish abyss, Han Fei saw a shell beach similar to that of the lotus fish. On the ground, there were also many colorful crystal mussels. The seaweed and stones were also covered with all kinds of snails. Occasionally, crabs ran rampant and then burrowed into the soil. What made Han Fei's eyes light up was that there were also lotus fish here. When the lotus fish here saw Han Fei coming over on the lotus seat, a large number of lotus fish surrounded him. For a time, the seawater was filled with colorful gauze, like a dreamy undersea fairyland. Han Fei was very surprised. Strange, there are lotus fish on both sides. It seems that the insect fish are sealed in this insect fish abyss. But where did the insect fish abyss come from? Han Fei secretly smiled and shook his head. Why the hell do I care so much? With his current strength, if he really went down into the abyss, he would probably not be able to hold on for more than a short while before he was completely devoured. Han Fei played with the lotus fish for a while and then touched the head of the lotus fish that had just sent him here. Thank you for sending me here. I'm leaving. This time, the lotus fish didn't stop him. It seemed to know that the danger had passed, and it sprinkled a colorful mist on Han Fei. He guessed that Yang Ruoyan must have been here. That woman was very scheming, but she dared to enter the dragon pool alone. She must have a big secret that she couldn't tell anyone. After traveling for more than 500 li, the scenery beneath their feet changed. After the lotus fish area, everything was no longer so quiet and harmonious. During this period, he encountered crab beasts, piranhas, mess-swallowing worms, and weird algae vines. This place is so full of spirit chi. At this moment, Han Fei stopped. The spiritual energy here was more than double that of other places. He couldn't even remember how many scenes this was. After all, the vast seaborne prairie had a myriad of creatures. At this moment, this was a colorful space. If the living place of the lotus fish was elegant and quiet, then the colors of this place were strong and amazing. On the seaweed, as many as dozens of sea urchins of different colors were gnawing. On the ground, there were 4 or 5 kinds of snails digging the soil. In the stone crevices, sharp claws occasionally stretched out. Seeing the blue sea wandering dragon daggers floating beside Han Fei, those sharp claws retracted again. There were also some pearl fish swimming over Han Fei's head in groups, but they didn't attack. Of course, these were all minor problems. None of them could do anything to Han Fei. Besides, it was not these sea urchins, snails, or crabs that were the most abundant here, but starfish. There were a large number of starfish here. Starfish were crawling everywhere on the pile of shells and sand. Some starfish's body was only the size of a palm, but their tentacles could reach several meters long. Some starfish had carapaces on their backs, and their tentacles were like sharp blades or darts. Of course, most starfish were common starfish, but they were very large and had a variety of colors. In short, this place was simply a gathering place for starfish, full of fucking starfish. The only thing that made Han Fei feel fortunate was that there were no dry leaf starfish here. That thing was a cancer of the level 3 fishery. It was a cancer of the level 3 fishery. Like the dry leaf worm, it could absorb the vitality of others. Among these starfish, there were no cancer starfish like the dry leaf starfish, but they were even full of nourishing starfish. For example, Han Fei saw a furry starfish named star sunflower. When eaten, one's blood would boil and his physique would be enhanced. Cultivation would be twice the result with half the effort. If it were in the past, Han Fei would have caught all these star sunflower starfish as soon as possible. But now, he had learned a lot and didn't act blindly. Since he came here, he hadn't found any particularly powerful creatures in this place. But was this possible? No way. In a place like the grass prairie, there could be dangers everywhere. Without the protection of powerful creatures, it was impossible for a place to develop so safely. Unlike the lotus fish, the colorful mist of the lotus fish seemed to be able to purify the mind, and even the insect fish would retreat when they saw them. That was their ability. But in this place where starfish gathered, it would be strange if there was no creature that could protect this place. Because of this conjecture, Han Fei didn't touch any starfish here. Of course, when the tentacle starfish crawled over and strangled his ankle, Han Fei didn't show any mercy and cut off its claws with a knife. Swish! The starfish whose claws had been cut off ran away with a swish. Its speed didn't look like that of a starfish at all. Han Fei snorted. He still hated this kind of tentacle monster. Han Fei didn't like anything that had tentacles and was soft and sticky. Of course, squid could be cut off and roasted to eat. But as for the others, forget it. Because of Han Fei's knife move, many creatures here began to flee. Even those snails didn't rush up rashly. If this was an ordinary fishery, I wouldn't care if you were a fisherman or a dangling fisher. As long as you appeared in front of me, I would stab you. Han Fei couldn't help sighing. The level 3 fishery was indeed a place where intelligence was born. Even if most creatures hadn't really developed intelligence, they still had a sense of danger. Everyone knew how precious life was. Han Fei gradually sped up. This place was beautiful but not gentle. He didn't intend to stay here for long. However, after Han Fei swam less than 20 kilometers, wherever he passed, there was a sudden burst of light. Han Fei was vigilant and deliberately avoided it. However, he didn't even run 100 meters before he crashed into an invisible barrier with a bang. I knew it wouldn't be that simple. Han Fei grabbed the water-dividing seal and slapped it heavily against the invisible energy shield. Rumble, crack. The power of this blow, weighing more than 10,000 kilograms, directly shattered the invisible shield. Is the power of this seal so weak? Han Fei was a little surprised. According to the dangers encountered along the way, this land of starfish was too simple, wasn't it? While thinking, Han Fei swam 100 meters away and hit another invisible shield with a bang. Another one? I'll smash it again. Rumble. In this way, Han Fei swam less than 2 kilometers and smashed 5 seals. Who the fuck is crazy? Why are there so many seals in this damn place? Han Fei was speechless. Which idiot is it? This kind of restriction was not strong, but it was not weak either. The weaker ones were at the junior dangling fisher level, and the stronger ones were at the advanced dangling fisher level. No matter what level it was, with Han Fei's current strength, even a seal that could trap a peak-level dangling fisher might not be able to trap him. No, it's impossible for so many seals to appear inexplicably. Is this an array? Han Fei landed and confirmed that this was some kind of array. When a foreign enemy invaded, it would automatically set up seals. Han Fei couldn't help swallowing. This is a bit too powerful. If it was really an array of this level, it meant that if he wanted to pass through this land of starfish, he would have to break at least tens of thousands of seals. If there were only 3 or 5 seals, it would be fine. But if there were really thousands of seals, he might not be able to break through even if he exhausted all his spiritual energy. Chapter 352. Figuring this out, Han Fei stopped smashing the array. Because no matter how many times he smashed it, it didn't necessarily work. A large array is invisible, and it is formed by nature. However, if it's a natural array, there must be a way to break it. This was the first sentence in the spirit-gathering scripture left by Old Jiang, which said that a good array was not necessarily carved, but made by using everything as an array, so that the array could be invisible. However, it was also added that as long as it was an array, there must be a way to break it. Han Fei had been studying arrays for a year. Although he was still a little shallow, he understood the principle. For this kind of array formed by nature, the eye of the array was often not fixed. It was very likely that an inconspicuous little thing was the eye of the array. This was also the most terrifying thing about a natural array. If you couldn't find the eye of the array at all, how could you break it? Han Fei landed on the ground and began to walk forward step by step. Wherever he went, all the starfishes ran away. After walking about 120 meters, Han Fei encountered a barrier. Han Fei didn't stop but turned sideways and walked to the side. After a while, Han Fei stood in this small seal and muttered to himself. 600 meters wide and 600 meters long. A single seal is so small. The difficulty of breaking it will be greatly reduced. After thinking for a while, Han Fei swam to a height of 20 meters and wandered around in this area. After a while, when he found a stone several meters large, he immediately smiled. The stones on the seabed had a long history. They were either covered with seaweed, moss, or shellfish. But a smooth stone shouldn't be. Han Fei took out the blue sea wandering dragon bow, shot the stone with an arrow, and swam out quickly. Sure enough, the boundary of the seal was gone, and Han Fei successfully broke through the barrier just now. Of course, the good scene didn't last long. Every few hundred meters, Han Fei would enter a new sealed area. But he didn't panic. It would just take a little more time. With his experience in arrays, he knew that these small arrays shouldn't be underestimated. The reason why an array within an array was terrifying was that many small arrays were interconnected. But if the eye of the small array was destroyed, the big array would definitely be damaged. Fortunately, the person who set up the array was not very clever. If it were him, with such a great array layout ability, he would definitely hide the array eye of the small array so that not even a drop of water could leak out, even burying it under the sand. Who would place the formation eye on the sand so blatantly? At first, Han Fei had to deliberately look for the array eye. However, after he broke through more than 10 small formations, he realized that the person who set up the formation was very lazy. It could be said that the person was extremely lazy. All of the small formation cores were relatively new. They had either been moved or used an eye-catching object as a formation core. In this way, it would be very easy for Han Fei to break the array. In just 2 hours, they had broken through nearly 50 small arrays. Not surprisingly, the 50 small formations were just a drop in the bucket for Haixing Land. To Han Fei's surprise, there were as many as 20 small spirit-gathering arrays among the 50 arrays. Although this spirit-gathering array had the effect of sealing, its essence was still to gather spiritual energy. Could it be that the guy who set up the formation is lacking in spirit chi? Not only the spirit-gathering array, but Han Fei also guessed why the person who set up the formation was lazy. Because this area was so large that it was very likely to be a ring, just like the seaweed wall outside, encircling the world inside in circles. According to the method of setting up the array, these arrays were likely to be made by one person. Then it was not difficult to speculate that this person thought this area was too large, so when he swam past here, he casually waved his hand and an array was set up. He didn't even think about hiding the eye of the array. That would be a waste of time. Han Fei grinned. He felt that he had already figured out the person's mind. Although the person set up the array casually, indicating that he was very strong, because the strength of the array was not strong enough, it should not be too strong. The amount of spirit chi needed to set up thousands of arrays was imaginable. Even if one used ones but to think, one would know that the consumption was enormous. Therefore, the person who set up the array added a large number of spirit-gathering arrays to these arrays, which indirectly led to the rich spiritual energy here. Haha, you can set up arrays, but I can't? Han Fei smiled mysteriously. Instead of breaking the small arrays one by one, he might as well make a big one at once. When Han Fei found the array eye again, he didn't touch it but moved it. Then, looking down from above, he rearranged many places in the array. Repeating this, Han Fei spent more than 3 hours and finally transformed 7 or 8 small arrays. In fact, it was not small, covering several kilometers. At this time, Han Fei was throwing a piece of white coral at his feet. Then, he clapped his hands and chuckled. Done! Han Fei suddenly sat on the ground and drew an array with spiritual energy under his butt. After a while, a small spirit-gathering array appeared. The place where he sat cross-legged was still the original array. In order to prevent accidents later, Han Fei deliberately left this array and replaced it with a small spirit-gathering array. When this small spirit-gathering array appeared, in an instant, with Han Fei as the center, 9 sealing arrays lit up at the same time, and billowing spiritual energy surged in. The corners of Han Fei's mouth curled up. I'm not good at other arrays. But this spirit-gathering array is my livelihood, so it must work. Yes, Han Fei transformed 9 arrays, just like the plantation circle at the gate of the Thug Academy. Han Fei just replicated it. However, unlike the plantation, the spiritual energy there was natural spiritual energy, which was much less than in the ocean. Therefore, there was no spiritual energy frenzy in the plantation. However, it was different here. The bottom of the sea, especially in places like the seabed forest, had a lot of spiritual energy. And in this land of starfish, the spiritual energy was more than double that of other places. At this moment, coupled with this series of spirit-gathering arrays, almost in the blink of an eye, a spiritual energy storm was set off here. One after another, spiritual energy tornadoes formed underwater. And the gathering point of these spiritual energy was only one place, and that was under Han Fei's butt. For a time, the billowing spiritual energy rushed straight at Han Fei like a raging wave. Han Fei was not afraid at all. Not only was he as steady as a mountain, but he also practiced the void fishing art at the same time. At this moment, Han Fei experienced what was called a gluttonous feast. With the right timing, the massive amount of spiritual energy rolled into his body, and it only took half a minute to absorb nearly 10,000 points of spiritual energy. Cultivating here for an hour was equivalent to swallowing a level 3 fishery spiritual fruit. How could Han Fei not like the spiritual fruit in the level 3 fishery? Half an hour later, somewhere in the land of starfish, a depressed voice said, "Who is robbing my spiritual energy?" In another place in the land of starfish, Yang Ruiyun was trapped here. She was almost annoyed to death by this array. Her records didn't say that there were so many arrays in this place. She wondered if she had gone the wrong way. However, when she saw the starfish all over the ground, she knew she was right. But where did so many formation seals come from? Not only the land of starfish, but a large spirit-gathering array could gather spiritual energy in a wide range and could be detected in many places. Above the abyss of the worm sea, 8 lotus fish were carrying a person to the other side of the abyss. "Young master, there seems to be a change in the spiritual energy." The young man with his eyes closed, stroking the lotus fish with one hand, responded faintly, "In the ocean, it is normal for spiritual energy to fluctuate. What surprised me now is that Han Fei's speed is so fast. How could he surpass us by so much?" On the lotus seat next to the young man, someone said, "Young Master Mu, that kid is very weird. It's hard to imagine that he can pass through the seaweed wall alone." The young man nodded slightly. Of course, if Han Fei didn't have some means, how could he have snatched the sea token? Father said that he has a legendary contractual spiritual beast, which is even more commendable. Anyway, let's catch up with him first. Although the young man called Young Master Mu looked calm, his brows were slightly frowning. There were a lot of dangers along the way, especially that seaweed monster, which even tried to put a soul lock on him. If it weren't for everyone's joint efforts, it would have succeeded. However, even so, they lost 6 peak-level dangling fishers along the way. This was a big price. If something happened later, he wasn't sure whether he should chase after him or not. Of course, there were also benefits. That was, young Master Mu got a message from the seaweed monster that Han Fei had been here. Han Fei couldn't be happier at this moment. It had only been an hour and he had absorbed 10,000 points of spiritual energy. If he could, he felt that he could cultivate here for 2 months and then he would get 100 million points of spiritual energy. However, before Han Fei could finish his joy, the spiritual vortexes in the sea suddenly collapsed and were replaced by purple pillars of light. "Who ruined my good time?" Han Fei suddenly got up, and what came at him was a huge starfish. The seawater suddenly became quiet. The man and the starfish stared at each other. They were both angry at first, but the scene turned awkward for a while. Han Fei said in surprise, "Master Hexagon Starfish?" Chapter 353. Han Fei couldn't believe it at all. He had never expected that he would meet the Hexagon Starfish again one day. At this moment, the surrounding barriers were crawling with all kinds of starfish, crabs, and snails. However, time seemed to stand still, and the hexagon starfish's 6 big eyes widened, staring at Han Fei in shock. "You've mistaken me for a starfish." The hexagon starfish was a little panicked. "I've only been released for 2 years. Why did I meet this evil human again?" Seeing that the hexagon starfish was about to run, Han Fei shivered and quickly took out the white stone that he had never crushed before. Han Fei hurriedly said to the hexagon starfish via voice transmission, "Master Hexagon, if you want to run, I'll crush it." Han Fei was amused. "I used to be a fishing master, and I couldn't react to you when you ran fast. Now I'm a dangling fisher. I guarantee that I can crush this white stone before you can run more than 100 meters." Han Fei was glad that he didn't throw the stone. He couldn't help but sigh. "I can't give my essence blood to others in the future. Otherwise, if others crush me like this, I'll be miserable. Master Hexagon, long time no see. Let's talk." The hexagon starfish was about to cry. At this moment, he felt that his life was full of ups and downs. Wherever he went, he always met bad guys. However, his essence blood was in Han Fei's hands, so he didn't dare to run away. The hexagon starfish's body began to gradually shrink until it became the size of a pot lid, and then it floated in front of Han Fei. "Human, how did you grow so fast?" The hexagon starfish was speechless. "It's only been 2 years, and Han Fei has already become a dangling fisher?" Han Fei said telepathically with a smile, "Yes, human beings have always been fast in their training." "Huh, Master Hexagon, haven't you also broken through to level 40? In Han Fei's eyes, the data of the hexagon starfish at this moment showed that it was level 42. Han Fei remembered that when he first met this guy, it was only level 36. However, Han Fei was not particularly surprised. After all, in the ordinary fishery, all kinds of resources and level 3 fisheries were incomparable. At that time, the hexagon starfish was on the verge of death. Now, this guy looked to be in great shape. Han Fei looked around and said, "Master Hexagon Starfish, did you set up these arrays?" The hexagon starfish's 6 big eyes were full of helplessness. "I've been locked up for 300 years, and half of my spiritual energy has been taken away by you. I just want to absorb some spiritual energy. It hasn't even been a year. Why are you here again?" Han Fei was helpless. Hey, Master Hexagon Starfish, let's be clear. I was really just passing by. I was going to the depths of the seaborne prairie. I didn't expect to run into you." The hexagon starfish said quickly, "Then you go. I'll open a way for you. Hurry up and go, business is more important." Han Fei was slightly taken aback. After 2 years, Master Hexagon Starfish had become smarter. She wasn't as silly as she was when they first met. Han Fei suddenly remembered what the seaweed monster said. It was said that a few years ago, there was an aura similar to his that drilled through the seaweed wall. Could it be Mr. Hexagon Starfish? Han Fei couldn't help but ask tentatively, "Mr. Hexagon Starfish, did you walk on the seaweed wall when you came here? It's full of seaweeds, and there seems to be a talking seaweed?" The hexagon starfish was still thinking about how to let Han Fei leave. Hearing Han Fei's words, he didn't take it seriously and just hummed, That grass is very bad. It tried to catch me. Fortunately, I ran fast or I would have been caught by it." Han Fei couldn't help but be surprised. That's true. At the same time, he was also a little surprised. What was the hexagon starfish's level a few years ago? He shouldn't have exceeded level 40. In this case, this Mr. Hexagon Starfish was still very powerful. It was equivalent to escaping from the seaweed monster when it was still a dangling fisher. Han Fei immediately thought of something. In terms of arrays, Mr. Hexagon Starfish was definitely a potential master. He had many advantages, such as being stupid and rich, a master of arrays, and good at escaping. Most importantly, Han Fei didn't believe that the hexagon starfish didn't come to the seaborne prairie to hunt for treasures. This guy was greedy for treasures. How could he come without any benefits? Han Fei even suspected that the hexagon starfish came here to hunt for treasures and then accidentally found the land of starfish. He felt that there was not only abundant spiritual energy but also many of his own kind here, so he could cultivate for a while, Han Fei couldn't help but step forward and grab one of the hexagon starfish's tentacles. When he was about to speak, he saw the hexagon starfish fly dozens of meters away with a swish. The hexagon starfish's 6 big eyes were full of vigilance. "What do you want?" Han Fei smiled bitterly. "Mr. Hexagon Starfish, I just want to catch up with you. Why are you hiding?" The hexagon starfish spun and kept a distance from Han Fei. "If you want to say something, just stand there. I won't give you the treasure." Han Fei was speechless. "Who wants the treasure from you? I promise I won't ask you for the treasure." Hearing that Han Fei didn't want the treasure, the hexagon starfish immediately relaxed and stopped spinning, floating in the sea, waiting for Han Fei to speak. Han Fei said with a smile, "Mr. Hexagon Starfish, in the depths of the jungle, there is a big red trunk. Do you know that?" The hexagon starfish's 6 eyes all constricted. "That place is dangerous." Han Fei said in surprise, "So, you have already been there?" The hexagon starfish waved his tentacles and said, "I just went to have a look, but there are a lot of annoying fish there, and they are also very bad." "Fish?" Han Fei was slightly taken aback. The hexagon starfish used "a lot" and "very bad"? This at least showed that there was a very powerful school of fish in the big red trunk forest, so powerful that even the hexagon starfish dared not to offend them easily. Han Fei asked again, "Do you know what fish are they?" The hexagon starfish's big eyes rolled and he said, "I don't know. I haven't seen them. They hide in the middle and can control those trees." "They can control trees?" Han Fei was a little surprised. Fish that can control trees? Han Fei had seen them before. Wasn't the Millennium Snapper able to control all kinds of spiritual plants? Han Fei asked, "Sir, can those fish sing?" The hexagon starfish was puzzled. "What is singing?" "Thim, thim, thim." Just when Han Fei was about to explain, a huge blue electric arc flashed directly in the distant sea. As the electric arc passed, almost in the blink of an eye, hundreds of small arrays were directly blown up. Both Han Fei and the hexagon starfish were shocked. The hexagon starfish hummed, "Why did you bring so many people here?" Han Fei blinked his eyes. "I didn't bring anyone. Can you perceive them?" The hexagon starfish stared at Han Fei. "Those people broke into my spirit absorption array. They are so powerful. I can't beat them. Enough talking. I'm going to run." The hexagon starfish was about to run, only to find that his tentacles had been grabbed by Han Fei. Han Fei said with a black face, "If you run, I'll crush your life essence blood. First, tell me how many people are there? How strong are they?" The hexagon starfish froze. He was in danger again. Helplessly, he could only droop his tentacles and say, "There seem to be 7 or 8 people, and they seem to be stronger than you. Shoot. These damn guys, how did they come so fast?" Han Fei's face changed greatly. "Mr. Hexagon Starfish, you are so good at setting up arrays. Do you know how to kill arrays?" The hexagon starfish was stunned. "I don't. Starfish don't kill people." Han Fei vomited blood. "Starfish don't kill people? You know how to seal arrays, but you don't know how to kill arrays?" Han Fei was speechless. He didn't know how those Sun family people broke hundreds of arrays at once. Their speed was dozens of times faster than his own. If they blew them up a few times, the entire sealing array set up by the hexagon starfish would be weakened. At that time, it would be even more impossible to stop them. Han Fei gritted his teeth. "Mr. Hexagon Starfish, wait a minute. I'll set up a killing array. If you dare to leave, I'll crush your life essence blood immediately." The hexagon starfish's eyes rolled and he couldn't wait to slap Han Fei to death with his tentacles. It could only blame itself for having such a rough life, always encountering these bastards. Han Fei used the spirit gathering array in front of him as the center of the array and began to draw quickly. In fact, he didn't know any killing arrays at all. When he got the spirit gathering scripture, he only learned one array from beginning to end, which was the spirit gathering array. As for the other small arrays, he was prepared to use them to save his life at the right time and didn't study them seriously. The killing arrays were complicated and mysterious, one level more difficult than the spirit gathering array. The difficulty of carving a perfect killing array was practically the most difficult of all array formations. Even if Han Fei wanted to learn it, he didn't have the time, and what Han Fei knew was exactly the simplest spirit explosion array. To put it bluntly, it was equivalent to burying a large landmine on the spot. Then, when the enemy accidentally stepped on it, it would explode. The crux of the problem was that this spiritual array was too simple. The hexagon starfish said, "You can't do it. You'll be easily discovered." Han Fei was speechless. "Come on, do it. I'm going to cover it with a concealment array. Do you want to do it?" Chapter 354. Although the hexagon starfish looked silly, it wasn't really stupid. If it was left here by Han Fei, who knew if it would be caught by others later? In any case, it couldn't beat those people. The hexagon starfish said, "Shall I disguise the eye of the array for you?" Han Fei's hand that was setting up the array suddenly paused, and the half-drawn concealment array collapsed. Han Fei couldn't help but look at the hexagon starfish up and down in shock. "You're right." Immediately, Han Fei was overjoyed and said, "Hurry up, Master Hexagon, hurry up. When it's done, let's run." The hexagon starfish hummed. "Can I run by myself?" Han Fei rolled his eyes. "What are you thinking? At this point, you're still thinking of running away by yourself? What do you think I am?" Han Fei smiled and said, "Master Hexagon, I'm here for treasure hunting this time. Don't you like shiny things? Why don't we form a treasure hunting alliance? When the time comes, I'll give you all the shiny things. Give me all the non-shiny things. How about that?" The hexagon starfish's eyes were still rolling. Han Fei was speechless. "Stop rolling. If it were someone else, they could take your blood essence and sign a contract with you. Believe it or not, I'll stay in the level 3 fishery for a year. In this year, we'll form a treasure hunting alliance. In this year, we'll form a treasure hunting alliance. 1 year later, I'll return your blood essence to you. How about that?" "Really?" Rumble. 800 kilometers away, another electric arc crossed the sky. The ceiling formation was like a piece of paper, exploding with a ping-ping. Han Fei couldn't care less and directly grabbed the hexagon starfish's tentacles. "Hurry up and set up the array. Otherwise, we'll both die later. 8 peak-level dangling fishers, not to mention me. Even if we find another mutant creature, we still can't beat them." The hexagon starfish also began to panic. Those people were indeed coming too fast. If the electric arc came 2 or 3 more times, the ceiling array it set in the land of starfish would become weaker and weaker. At that time, it wouldn't be able to resist a casual blow from these people at all. The 6 tentacles of the hexagon starfish glowed with purple light. Like lasers, the tentacles quickly swept out circles of lines on the ground. Han Fei found it odd. This array was quite different from the one in the spirit gathering scripture. But in terms of complexity, it was no simpler than the spirit gathering scripture. Immediately, Han Fei guessed that this guy must have found a book on arrays from a treasure hunt, didn't he? An array book that is at least comparable to the spirit gathering scripture? After a while, the pseudo-eye of the array was formed, and the spirit gathering array that Han Fei had set up before was directly covered. However, the spiritual energy here was still surging like a dragon. Han Fei gritted his teeth, threw out a blue sea wandering dragon dagger, and stabbed it into the soil under the eye of the array. "Master Hexagon Starfish, throw hundreds of thousands of points of spiritual energy here and blow them up later." The hexagon starfish's tentacles slapped the seawater. "I don't have any spiritual energy. I've used all my spiritual energy to advance." Han Fei grabbed the white stone. "I've lost another 50,000 points of spiritual energy with a spiritual weapon. You should have lost 100,000 points of spiritual energy, right? A spirit gathering array can be drawn at any time. 100,000 points of spiritual energy is nothing. We have plenty of spiritual energy in the future." With that said, Han Fei really threw out 50,000 points of spiritual energy, which stunned the hexagon starfish. When did Han Fei become so generous? It rolled its big eyes for a long time and finally spat out 100,000 points of spiritual energy. As Han Fei said, His life essence blood was still in Han Fei's hands now. Those people were obviously Han Fei's enemies. If he didn't blow them up now, he wouldn't be able to defeat them when they caught up. At that time, he wouldn't even have a place to run. However, just after the hexagon starfish threw out the spiritual energy, he said in surprise, "When did humans store so much spiritual energy?" Han Fei said calmly, "I have a sea-swallowing seashell. There's a spiritual spring in it." The hexagon starfish pondered for a while and felt that something was wrong. When the third electric arc lit up, Han Fei and the hexagon starfish's faces changed drastically at the same time. Because the array had been set up, the spiritual energy here was the densest, and the Sun family had come to this place. Han Fei jumped on the back of the hexagon starfish and said, "Master Hexagon Starfish, run." The hexagon starfish. "Can you come down?" Han Fei said, "This is your home. You can run fast. I'm not heavy." The hexagon starfish. Han Fei didn't care how big the shadow in the hexagon starfish's heart was. Anyway, he had found such a super labor, so he might as well make use of it. After about the time it took for a stick of incense to burn, another electric arc struck. The people of the Sun family finally came to the place where the fake array eye was. "Young master, we've found the array eye." Two subordinates hurried forward and bombarded the barrier. The seal roared and the ripples shook. Sun Mu frowned slightly and looked at the people around him. "Why is the spiritual energy in the seal array so dense?" Someone next to him said thoughtfully, "Young master, the sea grassland is also dangerous." Along the way, except for the lotus fish section, it was full of dangers. These tens of thousands of layers of restrictions blocking the way, I'm afraid they also require spiritual energy to operate. Sun Mu nodded, but he frowned and asked, "Han Fei is just a junior dangling fisher. How can he go all the way? Even this seal array can't stop him?" The people next to him choked and thought, "We want to know too. This guy is so weird." So far, nearly 10 peak-level dangling fishers have been killed by him. It was impossible to say that he didn't have any tricks up his sleeve. Gotcha. At the moment when the fake array was broken, Sun Mu felt a sharp pain in his back and shouted, "Retreat!" As he spoke, he threw his hook at the speed of lightning, directly hooking one of the two people in front of him who was breaking the formation back. Rumble. Bow. The sound echoed through the bottom of the sea, shaking everything within hundreds of kilometers, and huge waves swept in an instant. Sun Mu and the others had only retreated a few hundred meters when the billowing waves had already rolled over. The huge shockwave directly tore one of the two people who had broken the formation into pieces. "Protect the young master. Get out of my way." In an instant, Sun Mu took off a jade pendant from his waist and crushed it. A flood dragon phantom blocked in front of him in the blink of an eye. The flood dragon roared angrily for more than 100 seconds, blocking the terrifying boom. Of course, even so, Sun Mu vomited blood. "Young master." A group of peak-level dangling fishers gathered around and guarded in front of Sun Mu. The aftermath of the boom. Cough. Coughing up a mouthful of blood, Sun Mu calmly wiped the blood stains from the corner of his mouth and even slightly curled up the corners of his mouth. He murmured, "Historically, those who can get the sea token are all heavenly talents. Now it seems that Han Fei is really extraordinary. Interesting. I'd like to see what other tricks he has up his sleeves." Although one of his subordinates was killed, Sun Mu seemed to turn a blind eye to it. If a fool dies, then so be it. Now, his fighting spirit had been aroused by Han Fei. At this moment, Han Fei was sitting on the back of the hexagon starfish, feeling the vibration of the sea and couldn't help asking, "Master Hexagon, how many people do you think we killed? With so much spiritual energy and my spiritual weapon, we should be able to kill at least 3 or 4 people, right?" The hexagon starfish's 6 big eyes were still rolling, and it sensed for a while. "I can't feel it. The formation there is seriously damaged. If it was blown up, several people should have died." Han Fei thought his method was brilliant and couldn't help but say with joy, "Okay, Master Hexagon, let's go deeper. Let me tell you, it's useless to cultivate hard. You have to find opportunities. You are a sea creature, so you should know better than me." The hexagon starfish buzzed. Human beings cultivate too fast, which is harmful to their foundation. Only by accumulating strength over time can they become the spirit of heaven. This is also why sea creatures of the same level are often stronger than humans of the same level. Han Fei was taken aback and said in surprise, "Really? I don't think any sea creature of the same level is stronger than me." The hexagon starfish's big eyes tilted and he didn't want to talk to Han Fei anymore. Suddenly, the hexagon starfish's heart did a flip. "Human, there is your kind down there." "Huh? My kind?" Han Fei flashed and appeared next to the hexagon starfish, but he didn't see anyone for a long time. Immediately, he spread out his perception. A human-shaped ripple appeared, followed by a familiar face in the water. Seeing this person, Han Fei was furious. "It's you? Female thief. You've tricked me several times in a row. I won't listen to a word you say today." The person hiding down there was none other than Yang Ruoyun. Yang Ruoyun was also puzzled. Did Han Fei really pass through the Seaweed City wall? How was it possible? It took her almost 50 flash stones before she was teleported out of the wall of seaweed by accident. And she only gave Han Fei 2 flash stones. At this moment, Han Fei was holding the blue sea wandering dragon bow and condensing spiritual energy into an arrow. He didn't intend to say another word to this woman, in case he was tricked again. It turned out that although Han Fei had a lot of opportunities, he was not so smart. Especially when he met a cunning woman like Yang Ruoyun, he had suffered losses more than once or twice. Just at the moment when Han Fei was about to shoot the arrow, a fish skin map appeared in Yang Ruoyun's hand. Han Fei's momentum came to an abrupt halt. Although he was still glaring at Yang Ruoyun fiercely, he didn't shoot the arrow in his hand. Yang Ruoyun casually threw the fish skin map to Han Fei. Chapter 355. How could Han Fei let go of the map? Immediately, Han Fei took the fish skin map. It was a map of a dangerous treasure trove near the Seaborn Prairie. He had never been there. Han Fei took out Old Bai's fish skin map and compared it with the map. Although he didn't find this place, there was a small underwater mountain range there. Looking at the texture of the fish skin, Han Fei was almost convinced. However, Han Fei still frowned. "How do I know this map is real? Even if it is, do you think I'll let you go?" Yang Ruoyun glanced at the big starfish next to Han Fei and didn't think much of it, thinking that it was Han Fei's contractual spiritual beast. Although she was surprised that Han Fei had 3 contractual spiritual beasts, it was not unprecedented, so she didn't take it seriously. Yang Ruoyun said calmly, "The first time we met was an accident. The second time we met, I lured everyone on the ghost boat to kill you. I owe you one. The third time we met in the Seaborn Prairie, which was another accident. However, you helped me once, so I owe you one more time. As for the seaweed wall, you can't blame me. I had to save myself at the critical moment. Besides, I gave you 2 flash stones, so you owe me 1. Han Fei was so angry that he laughed. "Bullshit, who cleared the way for you? Without me, could you have resisted the assassination of the 2 advanced hunters? Do I owe you anything? I owe you an iron-head fish." Yang Ruoyun said calmly, "No matter what you think, I didn't set you up on purpose. How can you blame me for that?" Han Fei choked. "No, you knew the existence of the seaweed wall and the pit of dry leaf worms, and you knew that it was dangerous. So, you prepared a lot of flash stones for yourself and tricked me into treasure hunting with you." Yang Ruoyun took a deep look at Han Fei. "Make it clear. First of all, I didn't trick you into treasure hunting with me, but you volunteered to join me." Han Fei narrowed his eyes. "Would I have come with you if you had told me the truth?" Yang Ruoyun nodded. "You would have." Han Fei choked again. "Damn it, why did I ask such a stupid question?" Yang Ruoyun smiled. "Just now, there was a huge explosion in the sea. I could feel the vibration even from here. Come to think of it, if you were alone, there was no need to make such a big commotion. So, those enemies of yours are chasing after you? It means that you were probably forced to enter the Seaborn Prairie. There are pursuers behind you. Even if the front is dangerous, what can you do?" Han Fei's anger subsided. This woman was really smart. How could she guess correctly? If Han Fei was an unreasonable person, he would have killed Yang Ruoyan already. After all, in a world full of cultivators, there was no need for a reason to kill. However, in reality, not everyone could do this. Most people had their own principles. He couldn't bring himself to kill someone for no reason. However, Han Fei was not so easy to deal with. He said with a cold face, "Even so, I'll let you fool me this once. You also owe me twice. You should repay me with your life." Yang Ruoyan raised her head and looked at Han Fei solemnly. "The fish skin in your hand was drawn by my father. After 9 years, I just need to check the texture of the fish skin. Does that count?" Han Fei nodded reluctantly. After all, it was a treasure trove, so it should be counted as one. Yang Ruoyan said again, "I know you have been asking about the abyssal chasm before." With that, Yang Ruoyan threw half a book to Han Fei again. Han Fei took it and took a look. The words, "Exploration Notes of the Abyssal Chasm," were written on it. Han Fei's pupils constricted. He didn't have time to read it, but he still asked, "Why only half?" Yang Ruoyan said calmly, "I have the other half. When I leave this place and ensure my safety, I can give you the other half." Han Fei asked, "Why do you have things that others don't?" Yang Ruoyan said calmly, "Do you know how many people die in this fishery every day? To tell you the truth, the relevant notes of the abyssal chasm are actually not valuable. However, some things can't be obtained with money. At least on the dragon boat, you can't get a single one." Han Fei frowned. Where did this woman come from? Yang Ruoyan seemed to know what Han Fei was thinking, so she said, "I shouldn't have anything to do with you." However, due to a freak combination of factors, they ended up on the same path. The level 3 fishery is not so simple, and neither is the dragon boat. The world you and I have seen is too shallow. Han Fei waved his hand. "Don't talk so much to me. I can kill you and get the other half. Hey, if you don't give it to me, it doesn't matter. I'll go my own way and you go your own way. Bye." "Heh, it doesn't matter if you don't give it to me. I'll walk my own path and you can walk yours. Bye." "Hey, if you don't give it to me, it doesn't matter. I'll go my own way and you go your own way. Bye." Han Fei paused, braked quickly, and looked back at Yang Ruoyan. Yang Ruoyan looked at Han Fei seriously. "If I can't do it, you can kill me." Yang Ruoyan looked at Han Fei seriously. "If I can't do it, you can do whatever you want to me." Han Fei knew that Yang Ruoyan was definitely not a good person. Han Fei knew that Yang Ruoyan was definitely not a good person. But this woman seemed to be too smart. Just because she said that she could help him get rid of them, Han Fei couldn't underestimate her. Han Fei felt that it was quite possible. If he were just an ordinary person and followed Yang Ruoyan into the seaborne prairie, wouldn't he? Since she could trick him, it wouldn't be a problem to trick the Sun family as well. The hexagon starfish, who had been silent, rolled its 6 big eyes and suddenly said, "You don't seem to be able to outtalk her." Han Fei said angrily, "I can't outtalk her? I was just giving in to her. Otherwise, I could have killed her with 2 slaps. Yang Ruoyan's eyes widened. "The starfish can talk?" Han Fei suddenly realized that the hexagon starfish, just like the stone spirit turtle, could communicate telepathically, but he wasn't the only one who could hear it. Han Fei couldn't help but interrupt, "Who cares if it can talk or not? Come up, if anything goes wrong this time, I'll really chop you up." Yang Ruoyan didn't take Han Fei's words seriously but looked at the hexagon starfish in shock. A sea creature that could talk? She had met a sea creature that could talk twice in her life, both on this day. While following Han Fei, Yang Ruoyan stared at the hexagon starfish and asked, "Is this the one on the seaweed wall?" Han Fei shook his head. "Of course not. How can Master Hexagon Starfish be the same as that damn seaweed? I'll get even with that seaweed sooner or later." The Hexagon Starfish spoke again, "You can't beat it." Han Fei said gloomily, "Master Hexagon Starfish, shut up. Even if I can't beat it, I still have you." The Hexagon Starfish's big eyes constricted. "I can't beat it either. Starfish don't fight unless I fight it." Sitting on the starfish's back, Yang Ruoyan was full of curiosity. Is this big starfish really a contractual spiritual beast? She had never heard of anyone's contractual spiritual beast that could talk. She couldn't help but look at Han Fei. Who is this guy? Han Fei, on the other hand, felt great at this moment. He had to admit that it felt great not to swim by himself. In particular, the hexagon starfish's speed was beyond his imagination. At full speed, he might have to attach little gold to him to keep up with it. On the way, Han Fei looked at Yang Ruoyun solemnly and emphasized, "You and I are purely cooperating, but it doesn't mean that you can leave this time. Trust me, from now on, you won't have a chance to crush the flash stone. If you do anything, I'll take action." Yang Ruoyun said expressionlessly, "Our destination is the same, the central area of the seaborne prairie. In that case, why should I run away?" Han Fei didn't believe Yang Ruoyun at all and asked straightforwardly, "What's in the central area? I'm not completely ignorant. Think carefully before you speak." Yang Ruoyun pondered for a moment. The big red trunk forest. It said that at the center of the seaborne prairie, there's a very large big red trunk that has lived for countless years. What else? Yang Ruoyun glanced at Han Fei. "I wonder if you've ever heard of a fish called the Millennium Snapper?" Han Fei tilted his head. "So what if I have? So what if I haven't?" Sadness appeared in Yang Ruoyun's eyes. The Millennium Snapper is a fish that can bewitch people and control spiritual plants. It's said that the sound they make is the most beautiful sound in the sea. Of course, Han Fei knew that. He also knew that the Millennium Snapper was almost immortal in areas rich in spiritual plants, unless it was completely strangled. Seeing Han Fei's indifference, Yang Ruoyun's eyes narrowed. "You know about it?" Han Fei's lips curled. "Are you surprised? What's the relationship between the big red trunk and the Millennium Snapper? Why are you still going when it's so dangerous?" Yang Ruoyun shook her head. "That's none of your business. I have my own purpose. I'm different from you. You're here for treasures. You're here for treasures and to grow stronger. I'm here for answers. 32 members of the Yang family have died here. There's no one left in my generation. I have to come here as well." Han Fei rolled his eyes. "Do you think I'm stupid? If your family died here, would you still come here to die?" Yang Ruoyun said, "You geniuses won't understand. Without generations of people exploring the fishery, who would dare to come to the level 3 level? The level 3 fishery is full of unknown places." Han Fei scoffed at Yang Ruoyun's words. He didn't believe it. "Do you think everyone in your family is a scientist, exploring the mysteries of the ocean?" Yang Ruoyun didn't care about Han Fei's attitude at all. She just stared ahead and said leisurely, "Every year, the dragon boats send a large number of people to these places that are almost hopeless in others' eyes. Among them, the places with the most deaths were naturally the most dangerous. There are places in the level 3 fishery where few people can return alive. The central area of the seaborne prairie is one of them." Han Fei asked in confusion, "Do they send a lot of people every year?" Yang Ruoyun nodded. "It should be said that they would send people every time they passed by. Don't think that you didn't meet many people on the way. That's because the route is different. Some people might have entered from other places." Han Fei was surprised. "Even if you want to die?" Yang Ruoyun nodded again. "Yes." Suddenly, Han Fei thought of something. "What about the experts on the dragon boats? What about the hidden fishers? What about the hanging fishers?" Yang Ruoyun said, "Maybe they know, maybe they don't. A hidden fisher once died here. Since then, no experts have come here." Han Fei sneered. "Then why do they keep sending dangling fishers to die?" Yang Ruoyun said casually, "You don't understand the darkness of this world. Some secrets are more important than human lives." Chapter 356. Yang Ruoyun's words made Han Fei start to doubt his life. As far as he knew, there were many dangerous places in the level 3 fishery. There were many dangerous places in the level 3 fishery, but there were still people coming to explore. However, there were still people who came to explore. Could it be that they were all idiots? The hexagon starfish said gloomily, "There's nothing there. It was just some annoying trees and fishes. As for the big tree you're talking about, Only the fruits on the tree are delicious, that's all. Yang Ruoyun was surprised. Have you been there? Han Fei was also speechless. Master Hexagon, have you ever been there? The hexagon starfish hummed. I went in to dig stones before, and then I was picked up by those fish. Looking at its huge size, Han Fei was speechless. How big must the fish be to pick you up? Then wouldn't I be smaller if I went under the tree to dig stones? Han Fei. Yang Ruoyun was shocked and quickly asked Han Fei via voice transmission, isn't this your contractual spiritual beast? The hexagon starfish hummed, of course not. I am a free starfish. Han Fei rolled his eyes at Yang Ruoyun and said, let me tell you a truth. Those with more eyes have stronger spiritual power. Those with stronger spiritual power can hear other people's private voice transmissions. Yang Ruoyun pursed her lips but didn't care. Instead, she looked at the hexagon starfish and asked, Senior, have you eaten the fruits on that tree? The hexagon starfish's big eyes rolled around and Han Fei was speechless. He didn't know how this starfish could grow eyes. Besides, the eyeballs could move freely. 6 eyes, and the eyeballs could be in 6 directions. All that was left was for them to rotate 360 degrees freely. The hexagon starfish said, it's my fault. I was digging the stones and saw the fruits on the tree shining, so I ran over and ate one. Then I was picked up by the fish. Han Fei looked at Yang Ruoyun and asked, what's wrong with the fruit? Han Fei clearly remembered one thing, which was that the soul shadow he met last time told him not to eat the fruit and reminded him several times. Not only was the fruit inedible, but the fish was also inedible. At that time, Han Fei found it strange. When he saw the Millennium Snapper, the data showed that it was edible. Not only could it be eaten, but it could also permanently enhance the body's recovery ability several times. Several times. Han Fei was very tempted at the thought of it. If he hadn't subdued the Millennium Snapper, it might have been in his stomach by now. Moreover, the seaweed monster also wanted fruits. Could it be the same kind of fruit? But hadn't the hexagon starfish eaten it before? Han Fei asked telepathically, Master Hexagon Starfish, what's your reaction after eating the fruit? The hexagon starfish muttered, no response. I broke through. Han Fei. Yang Ruoyun seemed to be deep in thought, and no one knew what she was thinking about. But Han Fei didn't care. In his field of vision, a faint red color had appeared. We're here, the great red trunk forest. Han Fei excitedly stood up from the back of the hexagon starfish. Yang Ruoyun also stood up. She looked in the direction of the big red trunk and then at Han Fei. Since you know about the big red trunk, you should know that its leaves emit scorching energy. Han Fei said disdainfully, what are you afraid of? The seaborne prairie is so far away, and I've made it all the way here. Do you think I'm scared of a few leaves? Yang Ruoyun did not say anything. In her opinion, Han Fei was also mysterious. After all, not everyone was qualified to be hunted by so many strong masters. And not everyone could be so friendly with a talking starfish. It was not an ordinary method to use a non-contractual spiritual beast as a contractual spiritual beast. The hexagon starfish said, what do you want to do later? I'm going to dig stones. Han Fei said with a smile, Master Hexagon Starfish, remember not to go far. If it's more than a kilometer, I'll crush it. The hexagon starfish closed its 6 eyes. It was so angry that it didn't want to open them anymore. It hummed and didn't speak. In front of the big red trunk forest, vaguely, Han Fei seemed to hear singing coming from the depths of the forest. Yang Ruoyun looked extremely serious. The Millennium Snapper. The hexagon starfish began to shrink and became the size of a palm in the blink of an eye. Then Han Fei saw this guy drill into the ground. In his perception, this guy had already drilled into the big red trunk forest. Han Fei said, Master, slow down. Be careful not to be bitten out again. Han Fei waved his hand with a smile, and 30 blue sea wandering dragon daggers surrounded him, and the surrounding water temperature dropped sharply. Yang Ruoyun could even see the blue sea wandering dragon daggers emitting cold air. Han Fei shrugged. I said I'm not afraid. Ice and fire are incompatible. Let's see which is more powerful, the leaves or my daggers. Yang Ruoyun almost rolled her eyes. 30 spiritual weapons to protect herself? How rich! She took out a spiritual pill from her sea-swallowing seashell. Han Fei glanced at it, only to find that the pill was also extremely cold. It seemed that Yang Ruoyun had made a lot of preparations to come here. Just like this, the two of them entered the big red trunk forest one after the other. When they stepped into this forest, the sand on the ground began to shake slightly. The red sword-shaped leaves on the ground became darker and redder, and each leaf emitted steaming heat. Above their heads, red leaves fell and poured down like strands of red catkins, making this water area extremely red. Han Fei had experienced it once, so he moved forward without any scruples. Even though the red leaves were like swords, Han Fei could still maintain his composure. Without the control of the Millennium Snapper, the leaves at this moment were not as crazy as the last time. Even so, Han Fei's spiritual energy protective cover had been broken twice. And Yang Ruoyun was even weirder. There was no telling what pill she had taken, but her whole body was as cold as a 1,000-year-old jade. The red leaves actually swept past her body one after another. However, in Han Fei's view, Yang Ruoyun was not in a good state. That pill could avoid the red leaves, but it probably also had a huge side effect. At this moment, Yang Ruoyun's face was pale, and her footsteps were a little unsteady. Wherever her feet passed, ice marks were left. Han Fei looked at Yang Ruoyun strangely. Your body can't bear that pill. How long can you hold on like this? Yang Ruoyun's lips trembled, and her eyes stared ahead as if she were talking to the forest. She said, if it's not for cultivation, it doesn't matter whether I can hold on or not. Han Fei? Han Fei didn't understand what this woman was saying, but from the moment she entered this forest of big red trunk, she seemed to have stopped cherishing her life. Han Fei snorted. When will you give me the remaining half of the exploration of the abyssal chasm? Yang Ruoyun said expressionlessly, when we reach the real big red trunk. Han Fei grinned. The big red trunk is just a tree after all. It's those Millennium Snappers that are powerful. Yang Ruoyun said as she walked. Do you know how many people are around here? Han Fei asked in surprise. Huh? Where are they from? Yang Ruoyun smiled coldly. I told you before that there are many people coming here. Although the road is dangerous, it can't stop countless treasure hunters. He hasn't appeared yet because he's waiting. Seeing that his spiritual energy protective cover had been broken, Han Fei activated it again and asked, waiting for what? Yang Ruoyun sped up, and Han Fei followed the woman closely in case she played any tricks. Yang Ruoyun said, waiting for the singing. On the big red trunk in the center, there will be countless Millennium Snappers singing an unparalleled melody. Those who enter the forest at that time will get an opportunity. Han Fei frowned tightly. Nonsense. You said that all the people who come here are dead. Yang Ruoyun said, I didn't tell you the whole story. It's just that people know that they are all dead. There were quite a few people who could walk out. However, the memory of this day will be lost, as if they had never come here. Han Fei's eyes suddenly narrowed. Memory loss? No, then how do you know? Yang Ruoyun glanced at Han Fei with a smile. There are always one or two exceptions. Yang Ruoyun didn't continue but just sped up. Han Fei frowned. He had a bad feeling. This damn place seems to be hiding a big secret. What happened next also confirmed Han Fei's feeling. As he sped up, there were more and more red leaves. Although the seawater was almost boiling, the power of the leaves didn't increase. On the way, he didn't encounter a single fish, shrimp, or crab, but flowers and plants everywhere and the big red trunk. After only half an hour, Han Fei finally saw the so-called largest big red trunk. Before Han Fei approached it, the branches and leaves that extended out were already more than 500 meters long. His fiery red eyes were as dazzling as the sunset. When the seawater blew by, the sword leaves drifted with the waves and then turned into a burning flame. After landing, they disappeared without a trace. Yang Ruoyun said casually, this is called falling flame red. It's the original appearance of the big red trunk. Han Fei looked up and was shocked. How tall is it? Yang Ruoyun suddenly fell on her knees and crossed her hands against her chest. Do you know why the deeper you go into the seaborne grassland, the more you can't go up from the surface of the sea or from the water. Chapter 357. Yang Ruoyun bowed to the big red trunk in front of her. After bowing once, she slowly said, "Because the sea you see might not be the real sea." Han Fei was confused. "Speak human language." Yang Ruoyun bowed to the big red trunk again and then said, "In this place, the surface and the water are not connected." Not connected? Han Fei was shocked. How could it not be connected? Wasn't this underwater in the seaborne prairie? Since it was underwater, why couldn't it be connected up and down? Yang Ruoyun glanced at Han Fei. "Then why didn't you come in from the middle?" Han Fei was stunned. "I was afraid that someone would chase me." Yang Ruoyun said casually, "To be precise, the moment we entered the seaweed wall, the surface and the water were no longer connected. Nobody knew where they would end up if they swam upstream. But if we come down from above, we will go to the seaweed wall." This is an unsolved mystery." Han Fei was dumbfounded. What unsolved mystery? He felt that his brain was going to crash. There were all kinds of strange things in the world, but it couldn't be like this, could it? Yang Ruoyun didn't explain anymore and bowed again. After bowing 3 times, she got up, and then a pair of bells and bracelets appeared in her hands. Jingle, jingle. When Yang Ruoyun shook the bracelets on her hands, a map flew out of her and disappeared into the red leaves on the tree. Han Fei's face slightly changed and he grabbed Yang Ruoyun's neck. "What are you doing?" Immediately, Han Fei said telepathically, "Master Hexagon Starfish, come back. Let's go." However, Yang Ruoyun shook her head casually. "It's too late. From the moment we entered the big red trunk forest, you couldn't get out." With a swish, Han Fei put a blue sea wandering dragon dagger on Yang Ruoyun's neck and drew a blood mark. "Make yourself clear." Yang Ruoyun ignored the dagger on her neck and continued to cross her hands, shaking the bells and making crisp sounds. Yang Ruoyun said, "You can kill me, but you'd better hear me out. In a moment, the Millennium Snappers will come out. Those who have been hiding outside will also come in. Today, everything that was about to happen here would stay here. Maybe you can go out in a day. I didn't lie to you, nor did I cheat you. You're very strong, so you should be able to endure it." Han Fei stared at Yang Ruoyun. "What about you?" Han Fei had always felt that this woman was strange, especially when she was doing these strange things. He couldn't guess Yang Ruoyun's goal at all, because there was no way to guess it. Yang Ruoyun slowly put down her hands and stopped ringing the bell. Then, the first half of the book appeared. She said unhurriedly, "I've actually prepared this book on the dragon boat. At that time, I was going to invite you to kill those 2 people and lure you into the seaborne prairie with this notes on the exploration of the abyssal chasm. However, you had an accident, causing the plan to fall through. But I didn't expect to meet you again in the seaborne prairie. You and I are destined to meet. This second half is for you. Our fate ends here." Han Fei had mixed feelings at this moment. Yang Ruoyun was the weirdest person he had ever met. Not in terms of personality, but Han Fei felt that she might be a lunatic. Walala. At this moment, the branches of this super big red trunk began to shake. Countless sword-shaped red leaves began to fall, burning in the seawater one after another. The red leaves weren't targeting him, or they weren't targeting anything at all. They were just falling. Walala, ah. In the seawater, a voice that seemed to come from the depths of the soul sounded. Ethereal, pure, and full of fairy. Han Fei's face changed greatly. He had seen what the Millennium Snapper was capable of. There was more than one here. If they went crazy and attacked him, he might have to enter Forge the Universe to avoid them. "Master Hexagon Starfish, I'll give you 10 seconds to come back. If you don't come back, I'll make a stone." In the 3rd second, Han Fei saw a palm-sized starfish emerging from the sand under his feet. The Hexagon Starfish said, "I'm fine. They just need to shout. I've heard them several times. Can you stop threatening me with my essence blood?" Han Fei snorted and said, "It's fine for you, but not necessarily for me. From now on, we have to be together. Is there a safe place? Take me to a place to hide." Han Fei didn't think he was smart, but he was not stupid either. Yang Ruiyun, this crazy woman, was definitely up to no good. Han Fei felt that she didn't plan to go out alive. But he was here for treasure hunting and he didn't feel safe to be caught in a weird thing. The hexagon starfish said, "Don't hide. No one will notice you later." Yang Ruiyun nodded. "Indeed, you don't have to hide. I'm not lying to you. So many peak-level dangling fishers failed to kill you. So they probably won't kill you this time either, but I'm not sure about those who are hunting you." Han Fei? Swish, swish, swish. Suddenly Han Fei raised his head, only to see that above the big red trunk, one millennium snapper after another emerged from the red leaves and stayed outside the leaves, singing. At the trunk, a circle of millennium snappers also emerged. They surrounded the thick trunk and behaved very weirdly. Han Fei looked at Yang Ruiyun. "What are they doing?" Yang Ruiyun didn't hide it and said with a smile, "They are communicating with the big red trunk. It's like some kind of ritual. It's the first time I've seen it." Suddenly, Han Fei tilted his head. 1,000 meters away, a figure appeared. The man glanced at Han Fei and Yang Ruiyun and swam to the other side, as if he didn't care about them at all. Then, after only a moment, Han Fei saw at least 7 or 8 people appear here. However, no one talked to Han Fei and the others. They didn't seem to know each other. They all found a place and waited quietly. Hundreds of kilometers away from the big red trunk forest. Sun Mu and his team of 7 people were swimming quickly. "Young Master Mu, the Millennium Snapper's singing has begun. Are we really going in?" Sun Mu looked at the Red Sea in the distance and asked with a frown, "Is this big red trunk forest really as evil as the legend says? I don't know what happened after I went in." One of his subordinates followed Sun Mu and said solemnly, "Yes, young master, that big red trunk is weird. Anyone who has gone in has either lost all their memories or died inside. I've heard that some people have come out with news, but very few of them. Besides, they can't remember everything, only fragments." Sun Mu asked, "Has the Sun family explored it?" Sun Mu nodded. "How many people lived and how many died?" The subordinate said with a smile, "Over the past hundreds of years, our Sun family has sent no less than 1,000 people here. In the past year, 12 people have reached here, of which 5 died, 1 went crazy, and 6 were unharmed. Among them, 3 of them have made great progress and soon after they returned, they became hanging fishers." Sun Mu glanced at him sideways. "Are you very proud?" The subordinate's face immediately changed. "I dare not, but the death rate is already very low. If it were intermediate or advanced dangling fishers, only 1 or 2 out of 10 would survive." Sun Mu snorted coldly. "That's because the people sent by the family are all peak-level dangling fishers, who have the advantage in realm. However, the information is enough. Go in. Remember, don't look for opportunities, just see tokens." "Yes." On the big red leaf, there were no less than 1,000 millennium snappers. And in the higher places, among the red leaves, there were at least thousands or even tens of thousands of them that Han Fei couldn't see clearly. Their voices, which were not very uniform at first, quickly became uniform. It was as if a group of fairies were singing in the sky, and every melody was shocking. Han Fei had long been shocked, not because of the music, but because of the number of millennium snappers. Weren't they rare creatures? The millennium snapper was an exotic creature. How could there be thousands of them all of a sudden? If he threw them all into the demon purification gourd, what would he make out of them? Han Fei didn't dare to think about it. The hexagon starfish said, "It's time to scatter flowers." Han Fei? Puff! Suddenly, Han Fei saw a leaf burning and couldn't help but be a little surprised. Could leaves growing on trees also burn? But then, one red leaf after another began to burn. The speed was like pouring oil into a lamp trough. As long as a flame was ignited, the entire lamp trough would be ignited. However, this scene was much more spectacular than that of a lamp trough. On the outermost layer of such a huge tree, billions of red leaves were burning at the same time. In less than 10 breaths of time, the entire big red trunk had turned into an incomparably huge, burning tree of flames. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.